we're just going to vote on the bill, not as amended. Go ahead and call roll call.
Representative Davis.
Yes.
Representative Teschka.
Yes.
Representative McGuire.
Yes.
Representative Cash.
I just want to say, for the sake of my own children, I wish that the Senate had not undone what you did 20 years ago. My vote is yes.
Representative Goodrich.
Yes.
Representative Carbach. Yeah. Representative Payne.
Excused.
Representative Jordan.
Excused.
Representative Smith.
Yes.
Representative Delaney. Representative Clinker.
Yes. Thank you.
Representative Path.
Yes. And we're going to leave it open until the others can vote. All right, now we're on to Senate Bill 202. And I believe Senator Deery is here. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Wow. Yeah, well, I'll do my best to be as brief as I can, but I do think there's some important things that I'd like to make sure are communicated, and I'll try to skip over maybe some of the description of the bill, leave that for questions, because I know there's been a lot of conversations on this already. But just a quick preface, though. As you all know, the state has a goal to try to get 60% of our population having a post-secondary degree. We've done some important things to try and advance that. We've mandated the FAFSA, we've mandated the SAT, and last year we passed my bill giving students new rights to have access to their transcripts, even if they're in debt, so they can get back to school. These are all important things that we've worked on, and I support, and we should continue to work on these issues. But at the end of the day, there is an elephant in the room that we need to address, and that's the increasing number of students who just don't feel like higher ed is a place for them. A number of commentators have started to notice this, and it's reflected in surveys as well. The Gallup organization has found the percent of Republicans with confidence in higher education has declined from 56% in 2015 to 19% in 2023. It's a pretty steep drop. The Pew Foundation found that professors bringing their political and social views in the classroom was a leading cause of this concern among Republicans. 79% more than were concerned about tuition. In Indiana, a survey mandated by the General Assembly, that Gallup was commissioned to conduct, found that 46% of political conservatives in a classroom feel they can openly express their opinions versus 79% of political liberal students. That's a 33% gap. Similarly, conservative students were 3 times as likely as liberal students to believe that professors discourage them from commenting in classes that address with cultural or political issues. Some of this certainly may be perception, but I don't believe that you can dismiss all of it as just that. In fact, I would suggest that anybody that has a hard time believing this, and I'd like you to address the question, have you ever gone and spoken to the college Republicans at your local university? If there even is a college Republicans at your local university, many of them often don't now. So addressing this issue will both improve the quantity of Hoosiers that we can get in local higher education. I also believe it will improve the quality of education that they receive. Because we all benefit, no matter your political beliefs, we all benefit from being challenged and exposed to new scholarly ideas. Now, in the last week, I've seen a number of unfounded assertions about this bill, and I've also seen a few legitimate policy disagreements. As long as I have the floor here, I'd like to just take a quick moment to go through a couple of these, because I think it's important to clear the air on those. So the first one is a myth that you may have heard, that this bill would somehow harm tenure or make it difficult to attract faculty. To refute that, I point out 3 inconvenient facts for that assertion. The first one is that at every public institution in Indiana, boards of trustees are already voting to confirm whether somebody receives tenure. If you look right through the minutes of the April 2023 Purdue University and IU minutes, And you can see those votes right there. Now granted, you might call them a rubber stamp, but there's work that leads up to that. Peer faculty assess their fears, there's committees, the trustees delegate that throughout the higher education apparatus, and that is exactly how SB 202 will work. If we need to have an amendment that makes it clear that they can delegate that ability, that's fine. That's how I always intended this to work and how it would work, exactly the way that we conduct tenure right now, where the trustees are the final say, just as they are now, but they delegate that throughout the higher education system and it works their way up, and there may be one that maybe they don't handle in that public meeting because maybe there needs to be some HR discussions. But there's no difference in how this would function than what is current practice. Now, although that's currently happening right now, if you look at our code, there is absolutely nothing that protects tenured faculty from being discriminated against for criticizing administrations, for their outside political views, or for anything else that tenure was intended to do. This bill, for the first time ever, would put into code those protections for our tenured faculty that you cannot use in making tenure decisions, your outside political views. You cannot use the fact that you criticize the faculty or the administration, or that the content of your research was for some reason objectionable. That is a big deal for tenured faculty in Indiana. And anybody who favors and understands the reasons why we have tenure should be supportive of that and celebrate that change. And finally, on this myth about tenure, post-tenure reviews are already very common throughout the country. I'm sure we'll have a couple people testifying today from the AUP. The AUP data says that 67% of public universities already have post-tenure reviews, and 27% of those reviews can lead to termination. This is a common practice. Granted, we don't have it in Indiana, but it is not unheard of or revolutionary. Likewise, the Act of the American Council of Trustees and Alumni said as early as 2002, 37 states required post-tenure reviews. And my understanding is that Indiana State University post-tenure reviews are required every 3 years already. Now, there is a legitimate policy difference that is not a myth. And that is if you believe that we should make lifetime appointments, spending sometimes upwards of $1 million on that appointment, and you believe that there should be no occasional review or a review with any accountability, that you are continuing to teach seriously, that you are continuing to meet even the basic level of performance, then I disagree with that, and that is a policy difference. And I believe that you also disagree with most Hoosiers who are financing those public institutions. Myth number 2 is that somehow SB 202 would mandate the teaching of any particular content or even a pseudoscience, or that might also prohibit the teaching of a content. 202 would actually mandate certain criteria to be made in the tenure decision process, but it doesn't mandate that any particular content be taught. It doesn't mandate that students be exposed to every thought, and certainly not every thought that isn't scholarly. The language is very clear that it just asks on the criteria, faculty to answer, what are you doing to help expose students to a varied scholarly thought? It's not, what are you doing to expose students to varied pseudo-thought or varied political thought? It's scholarly thought. That is not an unreasonable demand. If you believe it's unreasonable for faculty to answer occasionally, how do you expose students to competing scholarly views? Or if you believe that doing so will somehow, quote, threaten the stature of your university, or the economic and cultural vitality of our state, or weaken the intellectual vigor of your students, as one university leader described the bill, then you and I have a very different definition of what it actually means to be higher in higher education. If you believe that we should not include in our definition of diversity the importance of competing ideas, along with the traditional goals of creating equal opportunity for all, then you and I also have a very different view on what diversity is, and I stand by that policy difference. I believe we have a good model in Indiana where people who are accountable to people appoint trustees who oversee the schools. But if you want weak trustees who are incapable of leading, that is a recipe for the General Assembly to fill the vacuum. And I don't think anybody who's going to testify against this bill wants the General Assembly to do that, and I certainly don't. This bill gives trustees no new powers. In fact, it actually limits their powers in what they can decide to reject trustees, or reject tenure on the grounds on which they can reject tenure. It actually even, it simply gives trustees a nudge to use the powers they already have to lead. Almost every day, okay, that's maybe exactly, almost every couple of weeks, I get sent something from a parent or a student that says, look at this. I don't think that's where they should be sending that. I think they should be sending that to the trustees, and they should have the ability to be able to lead and to make sure that our institutions are serving the people of Indiana and meeting the expectations of people who are financing them. With that, I ask you to support the bill and certainly questions if that's your wish.
Thank you, Senator Deery. So we are going to take some questions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'll make you very mad.
We worked last year on the bowling bill together. We worked last year on your bowling bill a little bit.
Okay.
Great bill.
And I appreciate the support. I don't know if you're aware that I am a full professor, which means that I've gone through tenure and I've been promoted to a full professor. I happen to be the only one in the shop of my campus as a full professor.
Congratulations.
And when you said that the rubber stamp it, I think that's playing it way too low because there's a review process that occurs.
The trustees I was talking about said some may say that the trustees rubber stamp that. I wasn't implying that the tenure process is rubber stamps.
You're not suggesting it.
Absolutely not. As I said, it goes through a rigorous process of faculty reviews, and I would envision this being conducted in the exact same manner.
Okay. Are you aware that even after you get tenure and you get to the highest level of professorship, there's annual evaluations? Because you suggested in your testimony that that's not the case because we're every year, not every 5 years that your bill suggests, but every year we are evaluated in service to the campus, service to our unit, service to our community, service to the state, service to the nation. And then we have to, we're evaluated on our teaching every year. We're evaluated on our research. Research doesn't end.
From your department head, correct?
Pardon?
From your department head or from within your colleagues?
Yeah, but it's passed on to our Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs, and it's reviewed by the chancellors, and I guess on the main campus by the president. So it's not a terminal process. We're evaluated every year. I'm very concerned that pretty soon I've got to get my annual report into for what I have done and for the last academic year, for the year 2023, and then I'll be evaluated. So just because I'm at the highest level of professorship, and just because I have tenure, doesn't mean the process is over.
So I would imagine that a 5-year tenure review would not be a giant leap then.
Well, it's unnecessary. That's what I'm saying. We have a habit of adding unnecessary legislation. We just did it one ago. It was unnecessary, and I think Representative Lang pointed that out. I don't know if you were here to hear the debate on that. And then we start talking about diversity. Diversity is something totally different than being receptive to various people's opinions. I've told you over again, and some of them I'm not getting old, and that's the die, and I chose to get old. But let me just tell you that one of the things I got my doctorate in 1978. When I got my doctorate, I became an adjunct professor at 3 different colleges. Indiana Western and Purdue Calumet, which is now Purdue Northwest, and at IU Northwest. And since then, in 1990, I was convinced to leave the principalship and go to IU and join their faculty as a full-time professor. Let me just tell you, when we talk about students who have different ideas than maybe the majority of the population might have, I have never, in my experience, and I've been full-time for 13 years, I've never shut down a student. I do make them think about their thoughts, and that's what it's supposed to be. The central purpose of American education is to create a thinking individual. And so if you don't challenge thought, that's not shutting it down. But you know who shuts down students? Other students shut them down. Okay? Okay, and I don't allow them to be rude to them, but I do allow them to correct their thinking or to have input, because if I say you can't share your opinion, then I'm guilty of doing this, the reverse of what you're trying to do with this particular bill. And so I think you're shooting in the dark at something that's a problem that doesn't exist. You may have one or two people who feel like because somebody tried to open up their thinking. See, the mind has to be like a parachute. It has no value if it doesn't open up. You don't need a stored parachute. When you need a parachute is when it's open. And your mind has to be open. And our job is to help students see things from different vantage points. And that's why we continue to do research. That's why we continue to try to improve our instruction. And then the point that you have in here is, you said that like the system has been flawed. The majority of the trustees that are appointed are appointed by governors for 20 years or more. This state has been under Republican leadership. It has been Republican government. So you say that Republican government did a terrible job of appointing these trustees. That's what you're saying. You may not be saying it, but you're saying it. That's the message that's being implied in what you're saying. And I don't think this is a situation that's broken. I think you want to break it. You start talking about allowing the speaker and the president will attempt to appoint these people. You're making it more political than what it is already. I think the alumni order has some input to the process. They've been through the process.
Dr. Smith, do you have a question coming up?
No, I have a statement.
Is anybody?
I'm questioning why he's bringing this legislation, so that's my question.
Okay, would you like to answer that, Senator Deery?
Well, if I could just address a couple things quickly. The first is, sure, there are performance reviews that may or may not happen within faculty, but I would suggest that if we went back and looked at, is there ever accountability for somebody who is, and to use academic parlance, just dead wood and not particularly teaching? I would suggest those numbers are very low, and in my view, it's reasonable to have somebody every 5 years, excuse me, every 2 years to review. Second, I mean, we may just have to disagree. There's a problem here, but I would encourage you to have this conversation with students. I encourage about.
My door is always open. That's Professor Lafayette door. My door is always open. So I talk to students, and not only students. They walk into my office because I have open door policy. And they said this is one that you can talk to, and I'm telling you, we have. With students who have problems with what's going on in the classroom, we have problems with school, we have community filtered. There's not a problem with the persons who use the system. There's no problem.
Finally, we absolutely agree that students should be challenged, and in my view, that's one of the reasons for this bill, in which no matter your politics, you should be exposed to a variety of scholarly views. We shouldn't just ignore them because maybe it doesn't fit within what the professor wants to focus on. In my view.
Thank you. Representative Coiker, do you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Deery, why do you think so many of our professors, and including the Dean of Engineering and several others, are really suspicious of this bill and are as negative as I've seen our faculty get interested or even willing to testify against this bill, actually compared to the water project. I've received a lot of calls. There's something about this bill that just scares our professors and our people that are at the college level and universities. It scares me that they're just not supportive of this at all. Can you tell
I've
me
been
why?
around in higher ed circles for quite a while, and there are a few things more controversial than tenure. It is certainly a third rail in higher education issues, which is all the more reasons why it's difficult for our trustees to use the powers that they have to make sure that tenure is working at our universities, because it is the third rail of higher education politics. And so I'm trying to tempt them to be able to use the powers they have to make sure that these million-dollar decisions are working both for taxpayers and for students. And the last thing I would say to Representative Blinker is I believe that there are very few people that understand that if they search Indiana code right now, they have no protections against retaliation, even if they are a tenured professor, for the content of their research or outside political activities, these reasons why they have tenure. This gives them that right for the first time, and they should be celebrating that.
Are your board of trustees supportive of this particular bill?
I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I will say this. I have been working with multiple administrators, multiple faculty from multiple universities for multiple months on this bill, and I feel like we have it in a very good place, and I've heard from a number of other individuals that feel the same. Obviously, that's not unanimous, but I'm comfortable where we are and with the impact of it.
Thank you. Representative Delaney.
Senator, would you not agree with me? One of the fundamental things that ought to happen to you as a young person in college is to be challenged by thoughts you're not familiar with, thoughts you're not comfortable with, thoughts you don't agree with. You understand that, don't you? And you do understand that your bill will cut that down.
The opposite, sir.
Well, sir, you're requiring the professors, for example, in sociology and political science, to give a range of opinions and to be neutral, in effect. You are neutering, neutering, your faculty. That's what you're trying to do.
No, all I'm doing is asking mandating the trustees to, every 5 years, have the tenured professors answer the question to their colleagues first: what have you done to expose students to a varied scholarly views? It's the opposite of that, in that right now there may be a minority, and maybe it's even perception, but the idea that when somebody enrolls in higher education, that they are only being exposed to scholarly views from one political paradigm, that is the perception that we're working to refute. You simply asking them to answer that question, oh, well, you know, in this unit we do this, I always do this activity, that is not a big ask in my view.
The question is not whether it's a big ask or it takes a lot of time. The question is, does it make faculty want to come to Indiana? And the answer to that is clearly no. Does it make the current faculty happy? No. But let's go back to the trustees. Are we sitting here now as a board of review over the trustees? Is that what we're doing here? Because apparently you're saying they have failed. We have a lopsided academic environment, all too liberal in Indiana. Are you kidding me? All too liberal, and it's lopsided, and your bill is going to fix that. Is that right?
What I'm saying is that the trustees have all the powers they need right now, but same thing with school board. In not every circumstances are the conditions in the schools set for them to be able to use those powers in a way that takes our higher education to the highest level it can reach.
Who is preventing the trustees appointed by 3 successive Republican governors? Who is preventing them from doing their job? Can you give me the names of the people that are doing that?
I don't know how much time you've spent in university
I've spent more time than anybody here, and I get criticized for it.
Okay. Well, I have my share of scars from university politics.
So who is stopping our trustees from doing their job? Who is telling them don't hire any conservatives? Is that going on? Has somebody told our trustees they can't hire any conservative professors?
I've never made that claim.
So what's the problem? The students are uncomfortable. I gotta tell you, that is an insult to our students. They're uncomfortable. I remember a few years ago, people that were allegedly on my side of the political world were complaining they needed trigger notices before something unpleasant was said. That was a dumb idea. You're taking it and multiplying it by saying every professor, in effect, has got to give a trigger notice by talking about things he or she doesn't believe in, because that way they'll be balanced and they can file a report every 5 years. That's what you're asking them to do, is to be balanced all the time. What if I'm a professor of feminist studies? These people exist, you know.
Okay.
What are they supposed to do? speak out in favor of masochism?
I have never said that there needs to be balance all the time. All that it's saying is you need to show in your reviews that you're making efforts to have a varied scholarly perspectives. It is not mandating any perspective. It is not mandating balanced perspective. It's that you be able to answer the question, I am showing, I'm making an effort to expose students to a variety of scholarly views.
On pages 20 through 27, you repeatedly propose that you can't, the board of trustees shouldn't hire a teacher who is, quote, unlikely to foster a culture of free inquiry, free expression, and intellectual diversity. So, any professor, for example, I'll use the terrible example of a woman teaching feminist studies, she's got to be willing to espouse views she does not share, otherwise she's not fostering a culture of free inquiry. Isn't that what you're saying here?
Her job is not to espouse the views that she has. Her job is to educate students.
And is that not by telling them what she's learned and what she believes and what she knows? Isn't that the job?
The job is to expose students to a variety of scholarly ideas that will enlighten and challenge them. Maybe there's a student that agrees with everything that he believes. That student's not going to be challenged.
It's not going to be challenged?
No, if a student agrees with everything, if you have a professor that's teaching their personal political viewpoints, it's maybe something backed by scholarly ideas, but ignoring other scholarly ideas, the students that agree with that professor are not going to be exposed to new scholarly ideas. That's the point, is that this is good not just if you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican student. This is good for all of our students receiving an education.
The word university is designed to mean that you get a font of knowledge. You're not supposed to learn everything from one teacher. So you're not happy if we have in political science a liberal professor and a conservative professor. Neither one of them, in your view, is doing their job if they talk about what they believe, what they've studied, what they've written, and what they know. They're both failing. Is that right?
Again, also, just to clarify, remember the bill does not limit you from talking about your political views in a course that it's related to.
No, that's not my question. My question is,
so
are
in
they
a political
failing?
course, in a political course, absolutely they can share their political views. That's in the bill.
But do they have to share the views they don't think have any credibility?
If there are scholarly views that they believe are important, varied scholarly views, they should be able then to count and say, you know, here's on this day we talked about Marx, on this day we talked about Adam Smith.
So I take it the faculty then will have to, over the course of 5 years, keep a log as to when they introduce a subject that they're not comfortable with, that they don't agree with, that they think is wrong. They got to keep a log of all the wrong stuff or unsupported stuff that they taught about. Is that what they're supposed to do?
They don't have to teach anything that's wrong or unsupported. Absolutely nothing. It's scholarly views.
Let's take an example. Let's get out of this social liberal stuff. Let's talk about a professor of biology or a medical school professor, I assume they're affected, who happens to think that paranoia about vaccination is really bad and really dangerous. A professor of biology or medicine who believes that vaccination is effective, yes, occasionally it can have negative consequences and they report that. But they're a strong advocate of vaccination as a public health measure. Do they have to bring in this Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or somebody else who says that vaccination is a danger to the world? Do they have to say?
Absolutely not. As I said in my remarks, it is not that they teach every idea. It's not that they teach every pseudoscience idea or any pseudoscience idea. It's that they be able to count that one of the things that they value is exposing students to a varied scholarly views. Now, if they think that's junk, then don't bring it in. But if there is something that is legitimate, that they think, maybe I don't agree with this personally, but this is backed by peer review, this is an important thing that my students should be exposed to, then they should maybe, if they've never done that, then that would be a difficult thing for them to address in the post-tenure review. Now, if you think that's a failing of the bill, then that's something that you and I will just disagree on.
How many staff will the university, IU, for example, has, I guess, more than 1,000 professors. How many staff do they have to hire to review these 5-year reports?
As has been discussed, tenure is currently a power that's delegated to ultimately decided by the trustees, but delegated throughout the institution so that it's reviewed by committees, by peers. It is not that the trustees are going to be sitting down and interviewing every single faculty. They're going to be talking to their department heads. They're going to be talking to their tenure committees, and they're going to make recommendations to the provost, who's going to pass those on to the trustees. Higher education is already built for this and set up for this without anything that's unusual to the higher ed apparatus.
Well, there'll be an additional set of reports from every professor who will have their log of when they were, quote, open-minded and taught something that they don't believe. That log will have to be there, won't it? How else can they explain?
All of us, maybe not currently in higher ed, but we give an accounting of our performance and our job.
That's fine.
That's not a big ask.
Let's go on to the student complaint. This is really troublesome. As I understand it, any student who meets your test and feeling uncomfortable can initiate a disciplinary action. File a complaint.
There's a difference between a filing a complaint and initiating a disciplinary action.
All right, then file a complaint. That's your word in the bill. To whom do they give this complaint?
The universities establish that policy and that procedure, just like they currently do to report instances of bias. Every single institution in our state has a complaint process or an observation process where they observe bias. This is just an extension of that.
But these complaints can be reviewed up to the Board of Trustees, right?
They could be.
And
If they were deemed relevant by the peers and the committees that are doing this and passed it on, they could be.
And it could actually be appealed to the Commission on Higher Education. Is that right?
Correct. If there's a belief that an institution is failing to adhere to the law, they could file a complaint with the.
Well, there's an appeal.
Education.
The university, in my hypothetical, the university said no. The department head said this is not a valid complaint. The dean has said it's not a valid complaint. The board of trustees has said it's not a valid complaint, but that student can pursue it to the Commission on Higher Education, right?
It could.
Yeah, and what can that board of Commission on Higher Education, what can they do to that professor? Can they fire him?
I don't envision that being the situation. I envision in the Commission on Higher Education working with universities to find a solution. And there's a number of solutions that could be the outcome of that.
Do you understand the concept of impairment of contract?
Of a what?
Impairment of contracts.
I'm not an attorney.
Well, the Indiana Constitution, for which you are responsible as MI, forbids our impairing contracts. And I think you recognize that on page 20 of your bill. You recognize that there may not be much effective discipline that can be issued. And instead, the university can sort of do the best it can. Because there's a 10-year contract, there may be an individual contract, there are board policies, etc. So you do recognize that there are limits to what the university can do.
Absolutely. As it says in the bill, we're not looking to undo any contract. Now, there is a matter of debate, as I understand it, of how much tenure is considered a contract versus a policy. I think most thinking on that is that it is not a contract. In fact, I think I've seen in tenure agreements to make it clear that this is not a contract, which is a giant out clause, which gets back to my point earlier about how there is nothing in Indiana law protecting tenure for faculty currently. This would fix that.
Well, do you have any idea what it's going to cost us to litigate firing by firing, whether or not this was a contract and what the scope of the contract was? We're talking tens of thousands of dollars per case if a professor is fired or otherwise disciplined. You understand that, don't you?
It's not my belief that the result of this would be massive amounts of firing. It's my belief this would be a prod to the trustees to use the powers that they already have to make sure that tenure is working for the people of Indiana who are financing those institutions.
So this bill is a message to the trustees rather than an effective action, is that right?
Can't it be both?
Well, it could be, but I think it'll be an ineffective action if it is. You know what swatting is?
I don't quite hear what you said, but I don't.
Swatting, S-W-A-T-T-I-N-G.
I do not.
That's a process which wise guys now use if they're mad at the Secretary of State. They send out a word to the fire department. There's a fire at the Secretary of State's house, and 10 fire departments show up to rescue him. Do you understand? I was a student for a long time. Do you understand that students will gang up on a professor if they don't like him? Do you understand that professors will get multiple complaints? Certain professors will become very, very busy with dealing with complaints. And you understand that small groups of students, formal or informal, can just drown a professor under complaints. Do you understand that?
Our institutions are very capable to sort through what's reality, what's not, and to handle those situations accordingly. They do that already with complaints all the time.
They do that because students already do have a right to complain, don't they?
Students do have rights to complain.
Okay.
One,
Let's get back to some of
One,
this.
no, I'd like to redress to that. One, then I don't understand why it's such a big deal to create a process for them to be able to complain when they feel like they're being pushed out of the university. And two, if they do, then why is it that they keep sending me, did you hear about this happen, did you hear about this happened, instead of sending it to the trustees or to the HR professionals? That's where it belongs. It doesn't belong in the general assembly.
I reject this push out. Purdue had the largest number of applicants they've ever had. Who's being pushed out? Are there only liberals at Purdue? Have I missed something?
If you look at survey data, it's very clear, two things. One, there are many demographics that are underrepresented at our institutions. That's racial
Conservatives
demographics.
are one of them?
That's racial demographics.
Conservatives are one of them?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Wow.
And I can provide that data for you.
Okay, we need to move on. We have quite a few people here
Well, I
waiting
think
to testify.
this gentleman needs to explain, this senator needs to explain the motive for this bill. And I think we're getting there. I think we're getting close.
Well,
Let me go
can I-
down and let me conclude on just one key point
Okay.
here, okay? You indicated earlier that you think we don't have adequate people applying, and that's because they don't want to go to college because the professors are liberal. Have you observed, you haven't been here as long as I have. Have you heard the endless talk about student debt? Is that part of the problem? The students are afraid of debt?
I have worked for over a decade at addressing student debt.
Yes, you were very proud that Purdue kept not raising its tuition, right?
I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, it didn't lower it, right?
What, sorry, what?
It didn't lower it, but it did raise it. And for that, you're to be thanked. But other schools have had to raise it a little bit. So there is student debt, and that deters me. Are you also aware that this body, to which I belong, has spent years emphasizing alternatives to college education and creating ever new career training, job training things, and making a point, a valid point, that you can often make a good living, being a bricklayer, for example, okay? We've done that. We've sent that message. But that message, the cost of tuition, student debt, those aren't the problem. The problem is there's too many liberals. Is that the problem?
Okay,
Well, that's my last question.
This is your last question.
There's just too many liberals on the faculty that the Republican governors have allowed to happen for 20 years.
Pew Research Foundation actually researched this of why do you lack trust in our institutions of higher education. The number one issue for Republican respondents was that professors pushing views that are irrelevant and political views that are irrelevant to the classroom.
They
So
chose
yes, this
to
is
go
a
there.
deterrent.
Oh, okay, all right.
They
That was
chose to go there and they lack trust.
Representative Delaney. All right, so before we get on to the, thank you, Senator Deery. Before we get on to the testimonies, I just want to remind everyone in here that this is a body and we have a civic responsibility to be respectful of each other. There will be no clapping, no snapping, no yelling, no taunting, no signs. Everyone will get their 2 minutes to provide their testimony, and then questions will be asked if we do so. All right, we will get started here. Camille Engel, we're going to start with you if you'll come to my left, and then Hillary McConnell, if you can come to my right, you'll be next. Thank you. You're up, please.
Good afternoon at this point, Mr. Chairman, or my chairman at this point, and members of the committee. My name is Camille Eagle, and I am a student at Ball State University. And I'm asking you to please, across party lines, for those of you who are here, to please oppose Senate Bill 202. My family has sacrificed, like I'm from a middle class family, they have sacrificed to put me through university. And they kind of expected that university to be grounded in scholarly knowledge with professors trusted to do their jobs. SB 202 undermines academic rigor and creates a hostile environment for both faculty and students. Especially for students in programs such as myself, so I'm a religious studies minor, and that's a really touchy subject, like across the board. They need to be trusted to do their jobs and know that they're going to be backed by their university should students file a complaint. And then, like, economically, which is something I hope that at least most of us are interested in, this bill will be devastating. When reading the AAP's national release for 2023, when asked if their state would be a desired place to work, 66.7% of faculty in Texas, Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina, places where similar bills have passed, said no. A third are actively considering interviewing elsewhere. We're looking at a brain drain of the best academics from some of our best research universities. And students with the means will leave. Just last night, I attended an open forum about Senate Bill 202. The number of students, including myself, who are considering, do I need to switch universities? Whether that be to finish our undergrads or to start our master's degrees. We don't feel like we're going to be supported if we can't have faculty who are going to be trusted to do the jobs. And then similarly, on the requirements regarding students, employees, contractors, and applicants, and this is on page 24, section C, this will be devastating to enrollment and hiring practices. DEI work includes combating poverty. And students, regardless of race or sexual orientation, who mention the fact that they come from a low SES background and maybe they're applying for a scholarship, they'll not be allowed to enroll according to the language of the bill as we understood it last night at the moment. And I guess in a lot of as an educator, so I'm going to be an English educator, I don't feel comfortable staying in Indiana because clearly at the moment our state government is saying that they don't support educators across grades, fields, backgrounds. So I would ask, please, again, across party lines, oppose SB 202.
Thank you, Camille. Is there any questions? Dr. Smith.
When a professor shares with you a view that you differ with, how do you process it in your mind?
I go use the internet and look up questions, and I also continue to ask them questions. I ask other professors questions. It doesn't harm me. In fact, I agree that I believe it's quite insulting that representatives would believe that we can't decide for ourselves. And there is a bias system already in place if we feel like our beliefs are being suppressed in the classroom. So I feel like it's honestly
Yeah, I like that part where you said you decide for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I want to support that. I was a junior in a course called Children's Literature. It was at IU Bloomington. And the instructor was an atheist. He said that the Bible was synonymous to Greek myth, and he kept saying that over and over again in the class instruction. I formed my own opinion. I am still a strong Christian. You have the ability to think for yourself, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I think that what people who think that you're not wise enough to think for yourself, the people who feel challenged by thoughts that are different from them, are people who are insecure. They're insecure. You're not. And that's the kind of student we want in the classroom. So when people are presenting topics, you think for yourself.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, Hillary, and then if Lindsay Everman, if you can come down, you'll be next. All right, go ahead, thank you.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Madam Chairperson. My name is Hillary McConnell. I'm a disabled veteran and a GI Bill beneficiary from my junior year at Ball State. I represent myself, and I came to oppose SB 202 because I think the complaint process is open to abuse, and the review of professors under, quote, any other criteria established by the Board of Trustees, it leaves a lot of ambiguity that leaves room and opens the door for professors to be potentially fired for minor disagreements, or Dr. Smith, you said, or excuse me, Representative, you said students may dogpile professors because students can be a little immature and petty. I came to Ball State for the art program, but I stayed for the religious studies course because I really loved the challenge. And in the information age where anyone can learn whatever they want on the internet, and amid health concerns of gathering in public places, higher education faces a challenge to justify its existence and incentivize attendance and create added value. And that added value is the mentorship we get from our professors. And if they aren't free to express their views, then they won't feel, students won't be able to benefit. I know that if any of my professors have been under any of this legislation, my religious studies course over the past 3 years, which I've enjoyed immensely and found so fascinating, informative, and challenging, I like to be challenged. They wouldn't have been able to do it. I don't even know if there'd be a religious studies course at Ball State with this legislature. So I really like being able to enjoy the candor of my professors and to be challenged in the classroom. And I hope you'll listen.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Here, Lindsay. Okay, and then Angela Smith-Jones, if you can come down to my right, you'll be next. Go ahead, thank you.
My name is Dr. Lou Gierman. I'm testifying as a full professor with 15 years of experience at Indiana State University and a member of the AAUP. The testimony I'm about to provide are my personal and professional views. I work at an accredited institution and in a program that requires specialty accreditation, something we haven't really talked about quite yet. I'm part of a faculty that's committed to continuous improvement for student and faculty performance, and as has been discussed, a system is in place, a system that is effective is already in place. A board of trustees is fundamental to the effective delivery of higher education. However, their fiduciary and evaluative role is different than that of faculty with content expertise honed by years of training and retraining. SB 202 places the onus of responsibility to evaluate faculty on those trustees instead of on a layered and comprehensive review process that already includes peers, students, and administrators who have worked decades to develop a nuanced understanding of the discipline as well as the appropriate application of academic freedom. Indiana should be proud of the programs across the state that help create professionals to serve Indiana and its citizens in critical fields. Our institutions provide key programs that address our healthcare shortages, including developing physicians, nurses, mental health counselors, and other healthcare workers. Specialty accreditors have committed themselves to ensuring programs are offering content that addresses patient-centered care, meaning care that aligns with patient values that speak to the needs of minoritized populations, as well as those that bring ancient political ideology. SB 202 will put the state at odds with specialty accreditors and risk programs' specialized accreditation, resulting in even greater shortages fundamental to the needs of Indiana citizens. I encourage and welcome intellectual and ideological diversity in my classroom and throughout my scholarship. I work to educate students to also welcome diversity in the way they think. Effective practitioners have to embrace diversity of thought, and it is a misconception that one cannot both believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also offer an opportunity for free expression of faith and political ideology. A college classroom is meant for this kind of dialogue, and everyone, faculty and students together, grow in their critical thinking from this kind of exchange. Instead of encouraging free expression, as the bill hopes to do, the ambiguity of SB 202 will only stifle those activities that encourage critical thinking. In closing, earlier folks were committed to supporting folks like superintendents and principals and trusting them. Trust your faculty, they're trained. This is what we do every day, so inserting yourself in the process shows us you don't trust us either.
Any questions? Representative Pack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Go Sycamores.
Go Sycamores.
So I just want to thank you for testifying. I really appreciate it. And just in closing, so you're saying we already have a system that works?
We have a system that works, that holds people accountable, that allows for diverse opinions, and allows us to explore how folks use their scholarship as well as their teaching to effectively meet student learning outcomes, and to make sure that our students are leaving as thinkers well beyond the thoughts directly delivered by the faculty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Teshika.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said that the current system allows for diversity of thought. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Is it, in your opinion, doing a good job at actually fostering that?
I absolutely believe that that's happening in my classroom. I can tell you specifically, I teach a topic that you probably find unappealing, or I think the law refers to it as objectionable. I teach gender affirming care in a healthcare program, which is my ethical and moral responsibility to meet my accreditation standards, but it's also based on evidence, science. And in my classroom—
I guess my question, no, I'm sorry. But my question—
I'm about to answer your question.
Okay.
In my classroom, we discuss how faith, how personal values, how somebody comes to the patient and practitioner exchange, how that impacts how they might work with other people. But we also dig deep into the evidence so that they can understand what the science is, as well as their own values as that impacts patient care.
Okay, so I still don't think, I apologize, but I don't think we got to my question. My question is, do you think the system as a whole is doing a good job at fostering this diversity of opinion or,
I think that the misconception that higher education may be indoctrinated into students would be better evidenced if we had a room full of liberals as legislators. We're not as effective as you think we are at changing the minds of our students. And that is because we are able to have a dialogue in a classroom and that the system evaluates our ability to do that.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I still don't think you got the question answered. I would say, and leading to another question, there was a lot of talk when Senator Deery was presenting the bill about the students and how apparently, we're, as some of my colleagues pointed out, that apparently this is akin to kind of trigger warnings and whatnot. But I'd like to point out that I think that this bill is just as much about conservative professors to the extent that they exist. FIRE is the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. Last year, so in 2023, did a study, a survey of 1,500 faculty members. About 70% of those that were conservative, and I will, I guess, go back and say that the percentage of which self-identified as conservative is about 25%. About 70% of those said that they believed that there was active discrimination against them because of their political beliefs and felt the need to self-censor. Is that evidence of a system that's working?
I think that's a really interesting perspective. I'd like to hear the viewpoints of other minoritized populations on how they self-censor as well, because I'm not sure that's the only viewpoint here that we need to consider. Lots of folks feel like they need to self-censor. There's literature that suggests that the students are self-censoring because of peer pressure and not because of what faculty are doing in the classroom. So how and why folks censor is really independent to them and not necessarily a cultural problem that we can address with this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I have Angela Jones over here, right? Okay, so the other IU professors, if you want to come on down, because I understand you're going to go right after each other. So Dr. Jai Markey, sorry if I said that wrong, Dr. Barnes, Dr. Danskowski, and Dr. Smith. You can come. All right, you each have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman and members of the committee. On behalf of Indiana University, we are standing in opposition of Senate Bill 202, most specifically the tenure position. And what I want to highlight, these talented professors will explain to you specifically how tenure does and does not impact the university from their perspective. I just wanted to highlight that should this bill go into effect as is currently written, there will be approximately a $3.7 million fiscal impact on Indiana University, not including any of the other universities, in order to adjudicate and also to set up a system with regard to the tenure and the tenure review that's being proposed. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will call up Dr. Markey. Thank you.
And you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I was supposed to be at 4 o'clock with my wife at IU North Hospital because she suffers from chronic pain, unknown etiology, and she texted me and said, stay here and offer your opinion on this. It's more important. That's troubling on Valentine's Day, but here is my testimony. Indiana universities are the most important magnets for recruiting a diverse, high aspirational workforce in the state of Indiana. 50 years ago, August of 1974, I arrived in Indiana, attracted by the state-of-the-art capabilities in Bloomington, faculty, and all of the facilities. If not for that experience, I would not have been interested in employment in the state. I spent 22 years at Lilly helping to launch the biotechnology era and was central to several important drugs. I discovered the active ingredient in human growth. I transitioned to IU 21 years ago. In addition to my academic responsibilities, I have launched 8 biotechnology startup companies that have created employment, educated leadership, and delivered sizable revenue to the state of Indiana. My research pioneered the direction to what we now recognize as transformative drugs for treating obesity: Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Eptown. For the last 2 decades, my IU research laboratory has been staffed by less than 1/3 native Hoosiers. I served as chairman of the chemistry department and struggled to recruit the faculty we most needed, many for perception of cultural narrowness within the state. We compete for such talent on a global scale and celebrate diversities in all forms: molecular, race, gender, nationality, political, and religious beliefs. To continue to excel, we, and I mean the collective we, as a state must recruit and retain top talent. It should not surprise you that we started a sizable disadvantage relative to the coastal states. Please don't do anything that renders it more difficult, but rather seize the opportunity we globally see as an oasis for diversity in the center of this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Dr. Barner, you're up.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Priscilla Barnes, and I'm a proud associate professor at Indiana University School of Public Health in Bloomington. I'm also a proud academic. What does that mean? Practitioner academic. That uses community-engaged approaches to design and implement public health services for diverse populations. My interest in this area was inspired by my underground experience as a practitioner and the professional exchanges that I've had with people in practice and in research, expressing the need to strengthen evidence-based, community-driven approaches to public health service delivery. Indiana University recruited me, a practitioner, to join their academic team, along with a diverse and talented faculty cohort, to spearhead community-engaged research aimed to strengthening our public health systems. My scholarship has primarily focused on rural communities, specifically community-driven approaches to where we hear the community voices amplified and how we address some challenging issues impacting our public health. In 2018, I led an initiative called Community Health Improvement Planning Project, empowering rural communities to leverage their own data to create their own solutions to how they should address some of these challenging public health challenges. Everything from tele-mental health services, peer recovery coaching services, and also ways we could get preventative care to these rural spaces. Indiana presents abundant opportunities for advancing community-engaged approaches to bolster what we do in rural communities. We also are proud that we engage students in this effort too. Through the co-learning and co-sharing that occurs with faculty, staff, and students, we all participate in strengthening research, practice, and our overall health in Indiana. Senate Bill 202, as currently written, will limit our public universities' ability to attract and retain bright and best people that we need to address these complex matters. I urge you, if we are limited in our recruitment and retention of top university professors, researchers, great students to our state, we will suffer. Maintaining this deliberate focus can help us position our state to be an exemplar in contributing to the future workforce and also our entrepreneurial spirit. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Representative Gash.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for speaking today
Thank
and
you.
for hanging in here with us.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that the bill, as currently written, would do those things. Is it the totality of the bill, or is there something specific in the bill that you find limiting? Because obviously we've talked about a lot of bills today, and some people come and they testify in a specific part of it.
In my review, I would say a few matters. The proposal of the 5-year review of tenure, it's very concerning, especially if we're trying to attract the best and the brightest to help with these complex public health issues. It's problematic. It sends a signal. Also, I do think there's opportunities for us to think about ways of embracing diversity, equity, inclusion, and thought, just not as written in this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Barnes. Or Dr. Dankowski. Good.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Mary Dankowski, and I'm a very proud member of the IU Medical School faculty for 24 years. I'm a professor of family medicine, and I serve as the Executive Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs and Professional Development for the medical school, where I have oversight of faculty recruitment and retention and matters related to promotion and tenure. And to your question, Representative Delaney, yes, this would impact the medical school faculty. And in academic medicine, competition for talent is fierce. There are only 158 accredited medical schools in the nation. And given that we are the only allopathic medical school in the state, we have a unique and critical responsibility to recruit faculty to meet the healthcare needs of all Hoosiers. And our physician and scientist faculty work very, very hard. They see patients, they're doing research, they're teaching graduate students, medical students, residents, and fellows. The tenure process is rigorous. All of our faculty undergo annual performance reviews, and we have post-tenure reviews as well, but they are based on the impact of their research, service, and teaching, and not on ideology. SB 202 as written is unprecedented. It will have an enormous impact. It is a deterrent to prospective faculty from considering making Indiana their home and the place to grow their careers. For our current faculty, given the competitive nature of academic medicine, it is easy for them to pick up and go elsewhere. And the Ivy School of Medicine has had several years of extraordinary growth, and we lead in several key areas. For example, last year, one of our faculty members received an award for the world's most impactful research studies in Alzheimer's disease. Testicular cancer used to kill a high number of Hoosiers, but now it doesn't, thanks to research that was done just down the road from here. We can only do this work if we can recruit the best faculty here. We take seriously our commitment to the health of Hoosiers. SB 202 will undermine our success, and it will have the unintended consequence of making Hoosiers not able to access the health care that they need. Please don't support this bill.
Thank you.
Question.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Smith.
Are you an associate or a full professor?
I'm a full professor with tenure.
Full professor, okay. When you got your tenure, did you stop getting your best in the classroom? Did you stop doing research? Did you stop doing service?
Absolutely not. My commitment to the university is strong, and it just grows stronger.
Okay.
I
Your
love my class.
view of your colleagues, did you see them stop in giving quality instruction?
The vast majority of our faculty are fully committed to the work that they do. They are members of the School of Medicine faculty because they want to improve health and alleviate suffering. We have a handful of faculty members who struggle to be productive, and we have mechanisms to hold them accountable.
When you went through your first tenure process, well, it's only one time for tenure, but there's promotions for professorship. When you went through your tenure, did you find that challenging for you?
The bar is high.
It's high, right?
Yes.
The bar is high, and you spend a lot of hours preparing. It's not just a 1 day or 1 week or 1 month or a half-year process. Sometimes it's a whole year and you're just getting ready for that process. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. So where people think that we're just being passed through the process, they're wrong. I mean, you know, I started after I got my first promotion to stop. But, you know, if you're really committed to education, you're going to be your best. If you're really committed to it, and I find this true of my colleagues, and I'm sure it's the case at IU Bloomington, that people are committed to what they're doing. And they're not trying to indoctrinate people. They may share their views, but they're not trying to indoctrinate people. And so I know if you ask me a question, I've been asking a question, but I'm told from my statement, I don't think there's anybody who needs this bill in order to be better at their job.
Thank you, I would agree with you.
Thank you, Representative Smith. So, Dr. Smith, you'll be next, and then while he's coming, Anna Morgan, if you can come down over to my left, then you'll be next. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Dan Smith. I'm a professor. I've been at IU, the Kelly School, for about 28 years now. Most recently, I served as the Dean of the Kelly School for about 8 years, and then as the IU president of the IU Foundation for about 8 years also, and looked after the bicentennial campaign along with about 2,000 of my favorite colleagues. But I want to give you a glimpse into some realities behind the scene. I've reviewed over 200 cases for tenure, and I've reviewed countless annual reviews for faculty in my various roles. I just want to give you a glimpse also about how this bill is going to manifest itself in the marketplace, a reality that I think I'm uniquely qualified to share with you. First of all, you think about annual reviews, you think about our faculty reviews, and I'll hit it real quickly on teaching. We'll focus on teaching since that's where this bill really comes down. And we subject faculty, for every single class, students fill out faculty evaluation surveys. They're composed of 18 or 20 questions, and yes, one of those questions has to do with whether the faculty member for that course creates an environment in that classroom that is conducive to engagement from students, all students. When you look at the battery of responses and you add them all up, the Kelly School has 10,000 students, 400 faculty, and last year the average on this composite index was a 6.3 out of 7 on a 7-point scale. That's comparable to how happy and satisfied you are with your Apple iPhone. So the standard is fairly high at IU and at the Kelly School, but I highlight that 6.3 out of 7 because that's indicative of quality performance, and you wouldn't see this if somehow faculty were indoctrinating students. You would not see that kind of a score. Also, students are offered the opportunity on those evaluations to offer their written comments of what they like about the course, what don't they like, how could it be improved. I've reviewed over 2,000 student comments, or individual student comments. I've never yet once seen anybody say anything about ideology in the classroom. Let me address that. I've got one more second here. If I may, please, I want to answer the question by Representative Cash about this bill. You're going to work really hard on this bill. You already have. And for the greater good, recognize a reality. I have hired over 200 tenure-track faculty when I was dean and a department chair. Here's how this is going to play out. We are competing against Michigan, Northwestern, Stanford, Chicago, go down the list. And I'm going to bring you in as a candidate, Representative Cash, as somebody I want to hire. So you're looking at Michigan. shame about them. Looking at IU, shame about what's going on there. You know you're going to have to pass an ideology test. You're going to say, well, that's not the bill, that's not the bill. This is a blood sport. Trying to recruit the top faculty in the world. We are a university of the world, and trying to recruit those faculty is a blood sport, and deans and department chairs around the country are going to do anything they can to get an edge, and they will contort your best of intentions. I step aside now. Thank you very much.
Okay, oh, now you have a question, Representative Dixon.
Yeah, I've got a question now that you brought up ideological tests.
I'm sorry?
Now that you mentioned ideology tests, has IU ever instituted any type of ideological test to apply?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So I've got a screenshot from a faculty posting a little over a month ago where the DEI statement is required. Do you think that would, the requirement to have that DEI statement uploaded, do you think that would be, I guess, off-putting to a potential conservative professor?
So, as you might guess, at the Kelly School, we could have, I suspect, because I don't know, but I suspect it would skew toward the conservative. We asked faculty, because we'd like to.
But I think it should, I mean, it's a pretty specific question.
May I finish the question? Yeah, my answer is I believe that we have never had a candidate not want to answer that, or I've never heard, we just went through a long hiring process in my department this year, and it's still going on. I'm going to answer the question. I think I've almost gotten it. The point is, I've never heard a faculty member complain about this.
Okay, so you think that that would not deter conservatives from applying to be?
The Kelly School hires 30 to 40 faculty a year in business. And we hire the best in the world.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, I love FIRE, the organization I cited earlier, the CEO of which is a self-proclaimed liberal Democrat. So this is not some conservative think tank, right? As I stated earlier, about a quarter of college professors self-identify as conservatives. Do you think that's because conservatives are too dumb to be academics, or?
No. I mean, I think intelligence is equally distributed.
So there may be some other reason that they're not joining academia in droves.
I don't know how that was even measured, sir, so I really can't comment on a survey that I've not looked at. I do survey research at a very high level for a living, and I'm subjected to a lot of multivariate analyses and so forth, and until I see the way that data were collected, I'm not going to make a comment on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Smith. All right, so we have Anna Morgan over here, and
Madam
then...
Chair, my apologies. I actually do have a question for Ms. Smith-Jones. She stepped away pretty quickly, and we didn't have an opportunity. Thank you. Sorry, just as the official government relations person for Friday, I wanted to speak with you. And this is, so my first question, I guess I'll go back to the line of questioning that I had for the ISU professor. Specifically to IU though, on that FIRE survey, IU is ranked 225 out of 248 in this freedom of speech index. Do you think that the system as a whole is doing a good job fostering diversity of thought?
Absolutely. I think all of our faculty and staff and team members are absolutely all about freedom of expression, freedom of thought, and a safe environment.
Okay. You said your faculty and students and
staff. Professors, yeah, just.
Would it surprise you to know that FIRE also found in an Indiana University-specific survey that 63% of students say that shouting down a speaker to prevent them from speaking on campus is acceptable?
I would be surprised, and I'm actually with Dr. Smith. I don't know how they collected the data, who was surveyed, and what percentage of people responded to the survey. So I don't feel like I'm adequate to answer that without having the background data.
Okay. A little bit, just one last question, Madam Chair. And this is actually about a narrow provision in the bill, and I'm just trying to get thoughts on this from folks from the universities. There's a provision that the Senate put in about having a representative on the Board of Trustees that's a local kind of representative. What are your thoughts on that?
A local representative, I believe we have one currently, so I don't think that would be problematic for Indiana University.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any questions, Jim?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we have Anna Morgan to my left and Mayla Cole. If you'll be next on my right. Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman and fellow members of this committee. My name is Anna Morgan, and I'm a junior at Indiana University, Indianapolis, as a social justice education scholar. I stand in opposition to Senate Bill 202, specifically page 15, lines 20, 36, page 16, lines 9, 24, 40, page 17, line 13 and 29, where the term minority has been struck and underrepresented has been then inserted. Changing the word to describe groups of people who have historically been excluded in spaces in higher education creates a vagueness that blurs lines for diversity, equity, and inclusion programs on my campus that have increased graduation rates among minority students. This vagueness will impact the intended purpose of this program by altering the narrative of an inclusive, intellectually diverse space. For instance, at IUI, Diversity Enrichment and Achievement Program is a racially and culturally diverse student success and retention program. Further, DEEP provides a supportive community, programs, and initiatives to aid students transition to college and foster the success of students from traditionally marginalized groups from the first year to graduation. A 2023 IUPUI institutional and decision support report on DEEP shows that the incoming students who participate in DEEP are more likely to be retained at IU Indianapolis compared to minority students who did not participate. I'm concerned that replacing minority with a more broad term on top of long-term workload increases that were discussed in the Legislative Services Agency fiscal impact statement will discourage people to work in multicultural spaces within public universities, which can lead to a lower capacity to maintain retention of minority students and ensure their graduation. In the IUPUI DEEP report I mentioned earlier, retention rates increased subsequently, impacting graduation rates, which also increased. Meaning this bill in its current form will cause a negative impact on programs and impact graduation rates among minority students on campus. Again, I encourage you to strike underrepresented and insert minority on page 15, lines 20, 36, page 16, lines 9, 24, 40, page 17, 9, 13, 29. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Anna? Oh, yes, Representative Tushin.
Yes, so this is just a point of statement, Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you for coming and quickly getting all those page and line citations in there. I did want to point out, and we've had some discussions about this particular piece of the bill as committee members and the folks in the hallway. I do think that there is potentially, an appetite to swap those terms when we come back next week to vote the bill out. I would like to point out, though, that all of kind of the university, State University, Ball State, IU, use this term underrepresented in their DEI kind of material that they have, and so I don't think it was an intentional thing. I certainly don't want to speak for Senator Deery, but did want to kind of let you know that I think there's a lot of discussion about that happening. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, you're Mayla? Okay, thank you. And then Jonathan Schlesinger, if you can come to my left, please. Thank you, go ahead.
Good afternoon, my name is Mayla Cole, and I'm a first-year student at Ball State University, studying English, Women's and Gender Studies, and History. I oppose SB 202 because it poses a threat to the humanities, and it threatens to tenure professors who explore complex and controversial ideas. It threatens programs such as those in the social sciences, those in our Department of Women's, Gender, and African American Studies, as well as parts of programs such as the urban planning portion of our College of Architecture and Planning. The SB 202 will lead to less student and faculty retention in our Indiana universities, and it will ultimately threaten the academic liberty to teach current viewpoints. As someone who wishes to remain in the state of Indiana to continue my educational career, bills such as SB 202 threaten the tenure of professors who are experts in their field. And if passed, SB 202 will essentially lead to the depreciating value of an Indiana college degree. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No, thank you. Jonathan Schlesinger, you're on. I'm sorry?
Schlesinger.
Thank you. And Colin Johnson, if you can come down to my right, you'll be next. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jonathan Schlesinger, and I'm an associate professor at IU Bloomington. Here on my own accord. I teach courses in the history of China, and I teach the last courses you take when you're a history major. researching. So the students pick whatever topic they're interested in, and the only rule is they have to research it rigorously and make their arguments compelling. In my classes on Chinese history in particular, and in all my classes, I ask my students to think for themselves. But inevitably, some students are troubled by what I teach, including sometimes our students visiting from China. How can it not be hard for them when a course asks them to face, often for the first time, the background behind the unfolding tragedies in Xinjiang or Tibet, and not just talk about the scholarly works that talk about the achievements of the People's Republic? If this bill requires that I be judged on whether I introduce my students to quote, this is on page 21, a variety of political and ideological frameworks, not truths, and still more, it encourages students to report me for potential discipline if I don't cater enough to their political beliefs. Now, I'm not sure that the purpose of this, it's clear that the purpose of this bill isn't to have me teach Xi Jinping thought or Maoism with more sort of gusto in my classes. In fact, I've just been encouraged to go speak to the college Republicans. But what happens in my classroom shouldn't be driven by these ideological concerns. It should be driven by analytical precision, deep research, and an informed exchange of ideas. It shouldn't be subject to ideological whims or political considerations. SB 202, in this way, strips away academic freedom. It doesn't grant it, and it compels speech. It doesn't protect it. In the People's Republic of China, educators long ago lost their independence to political boards, and the result was brain drain. And for decades, the best students and faculty, at least many of them, have left China, if they can, for education and research. Now, that didn't happen in my case. I moved to Indiana to come here to do research, and I love it here. It's where I've raised my 2 sons, and it's where I've thrived in my career. But SB 202 makes me reconsider that. Not because I worry about my own personal career, but because political oversight of my scholarly work and my teaching runs so profoundly counter to my principles. And I think I'm hardly alone. I've talked to colleagues in other states. They've expressed alarm and dismay about this bill as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right, thank you. We have Paula to my right, so Jamin Nafini. Nobody on that. Thank you, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Johnson, and I'm an associate professor of American Studies and Gender Studies at Indiana University of Bloomington, where I currently also serve as the elected president of the Bloomington Faculty Council. Although I do not speak for the university as an entity, I am charged under the terms of the IU Bloomington's governance, governance documents and speaking on behalf of that campus's faculty on matters of concern to them. So let me begin by assuring you in no uncertain terms, as you've already heard, that SB 202 in its existing form concerns many of my colleagues that I know very much. You have already heard others testify about the way certain provisions in SB 202 will significantly impair our ability to recruit the most talented faculty and productive faculty to the state. So I just want to take an opportunity to assure members of this committee that these concerns are indeed very real and very well founded. With all due respect to Senator Deery, I'm very involved in the process of kind of tenure reviews. I'm very involved in the policy making on campus. And while I can see some of the points that he was making about similarities between what currently happens and what is being sort of contemplated in this bill, I can, from my perspective, assure many of you that what is being contemplated in this bill would actually constitute a fairly significant departure from what currently happens. In part because of the fact that those 5-year reviews, under the terms of this bill, could result in termination, and that is actually not exactly how things work currently under our review process. Because time is short, I actually want to focus on a slightly different issue than the threat to tenure and its significance in terms of our ability to recruit top-notch faculty from around the world. I actually want to talk a little bit about teaching and about the ways that I believe, whatever its intentions may be, the letter of this letter of this law could actually interfere with our ability to work constructively with students. Universities are extremely complex organizations, and they draw together individuals with a broad range of experience experiences, perspectives, and investments by design. So I understand why people within those organizations, and especially students, sometimes struggle to figure out how to navigate disagreements that predictably arise in the context of close collaborative work, which is really the only kind of work we do with students. I am the president of the Faculty Council, and I sometimes struggle to figure out how to do this, so I get it.
How long can you wrap it up? Can you wrap it up?
Yes. I would say the fact is that helping students learn how to have principled disagreements with others and either resolve those disagreements or figure out how to continue to work productively with others in the pursuit of shared goals despite them is probably the most important job skill that we teach our students. I don't run a business, but I do know that students need to learn how to do that, and creating a circumstance where we are actually telling them the way to address those concerns is to file anonymous complaints with the Academic Commission on Higher Education is not the way to teach them that skill. Sitting and having hard conversations with people respectfully and productively is the way to do it, and we would like to continue to do it.
Thank you. Is there any questions? No, seeing none. Thank you. So we have David to my left. Nor O'Neill, you'll be next on my right. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So hi, my name is Jamin Matheny. I'm a freshman studying political science at BSU, and I am here in vehement opposition to SB 202 for a couple of reasons. First and foremost of which is the undemocratic restructuring of the Board of Trustees. So as it stands, the Alumni Council has the power to appoint 2 of those alumni slots that they basically give nominees to the governor and he appoints them then to the council. And what this bill does is it takes away that ability of the council and gives it to the President Pro Tempore to appoint one of them, and it gives it to the Speaker of the House to appoint one of them, with advice from the minority leaders. Now, let's be really clear about something. With advice from means nothing, and the minority leaders will have little to no say at all. These people that the conservatives will be appointing have every incentive to uphold conservative viewpoints, and you can point out that there's a policy of neutrality, but similar to the with advice from, the policy of neutrality is pretty vague, and there's a reason for that. It is undemocratic to remove this power from the hands of everyday people and put it into the hands of the legislature. Now, I was going to talk a little bit about tenure, but I feel like the professor has actually done a very nice job of that, and I'm kind of thankful for that because it's not my specialty. So I'm going to talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion, starting off with the changing of minority to underrepresented as one of peers already mentioned. It is dishonest and frankly offensive to equate the struggles that people have gone through historically in this country and throughout the world to the hurt feelings of conservative kids who had their viewpoints challenged for the first time in the classroom. And it's also very clear that these people do not care about underrepresented communities, since they say later on in this bill that universities may not award admission if students include DEI statements in their applications and to use the words directly of Representative Deery. This substantially disrupts the protected expressive activity of the student to not allow people to share the stories that make them themselves, that affect every facet of their lives, is unbelievable, and it makes a mockery of our history. This bill goes against everything I stand for, and it goes against everything that you all claim to stand for. That's all.
Any questions? No? Hold your applause. All right, over here we have Nor, and next up on my left we will have Maria Marsh. Sorry if I didn't say that right. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and hello, members of the committee. I'm Nor O'Neill. I'm a professor at Purdue Fort Wayne. The views I will express are my own and do not represent the views of Purdue or Purdue Fort Wayne. I've been hearing concerns from educators in the tech fields about the requirements of this bill that would suggest they have to present nonsense material in order to fulfill the criterion of presenting diverse viewpoints. And they think that that will waste valuable time in the classroom. That, however, is not my concern, although it does concern me to some degree. I have the opposite problem. I am a cultural anthropologist. I teach some of the most controversial and highly debated topics you can imagine, evolution, race, colonialism, family, religion, you name it. My teaching is about encouraging expression of diverse viewpoints and talking about different experiences in the classroom. Sometimes I feel like I have to deal with an overload of diverse viewpoints. But at the same time, I love that. That is one of the best parts of my job. And my students tell me that the opportunity to learn and hear about a broad spectrum of experiences and viewpoints will serve them well in their academic studies and their career. And that's what I want to hear, because that's what I'm trying to achieve. You might think by hearing me say that I would agree or support SB 202, because SB 202 says it's about respect and diversity. Nothing could be further from the truth. I don't. I adamantly oppose this bill. My concern is about the unintended consequences of a bill that inserts political control into the very delicate balance and difficult work that I do in a classroom such as mine. This bill takes power away from educators like me and gives it to politicians. This bill assumes that politicians are better at keeping and protecting that delicate balance than educators. I don't buy that. I don't buy that people whose life work is to implement political platforms through political institutions such as this august body, which I have a lot of respect for, but I still don't believe that these people are better at nurturing the expression of diverse viewpoints than career educators such as myself. I am concerned about the unintended consequences of the provisions in the bill that invite faculty and students to report on each other and in fact sets up an infrastructure for surveillance. Like Professor Schlesinger, my field of expertise is a former communist region. I studied the former Soviet Union. And I can tell you that university professors in the former Soviet Union also had very limited freedom to teach and research. Living there for 4 years, first as a Peace Corps volunteer, I heard a lot about the way knowledge production was controlled by the regime, by politicians who thought they knew more about what was going on in the academy.
Can you wrap it up?
Sure. I realize this is itself a very one-sided view of the Soviet Union, and I'm happy to give you some better sides of it. There are many wonderful things that happened there, but this was not one of them. Freedom of speech is critical to a democracy. It's critical, and freedom of speech in the academy is called academic freedom. That implies allowing educators to be free of political interference. This bill injects politics into our higher education system, and I urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. You said this bill interjects politics and that it gives politicians control over the class. Can you help me understand how it does that?
Well, so it sets up several, there's several provisions in the bill that sets up ways that students are, actually it was part of the testimony earlier, the way that some of the surveillance mechanisms that the bill sets up, that is going to have a chilling effect on free speech. We haven't done that ourselves. Educators have not set up those kinds of infrastructure that you are doing. We have other ways of dealing with these kinds of things. Trust us. Let us do that.
So your universities, or state universities in general, don't have any sort of surveillance. That's your contention? That we're not asking folks to report on each other or anything like that?
We have ways that students can deal with issues of grade problem. Maybe they have an issue with a professor that they think has been unfair to them. What we don't have is these kind of vague definitions of diverse viewpoints that must be addressed in a classroom. I have a big problem with the vagueness of this bill. That, I mentioned unintended consequences.
Yeah.
By requiring us to by allowing people to be held by standards of diverse viewpoints without really giving a sense of what that means. And I'm going to argue right here that diverse viewpoints is going to be very different in an engineering classroom versus a healthcare classroom versus an anthropology classroom.
Sure. Yeah. So my question was more specific to, you mentioned the concern that what we're doing here is going to be kind of asking folks to snitch on each other, for lack of a better word, right? So I just didn't know.
That information is going to go to these 5 reviews that is set up.
Yeah. So I just didn't know if you were aware that most, if not all, of our universities, including IU and BSU and Purdue, all have like bias response teams, or where students can go on and report on each other about microaggressions and things like that?
Fine.
Okay, so I just didn't, yeah, I didn't know if you were aware of that.
I'm not aware that we have one on our campus, and that's fine if the educators are participating in that. The difference is this is something
Well,
coming
okay.
from a completely different political body.
Yeah, okay. One last question.
That's what I'm talking, that's what we mean when we talk about academic freedom. We say, you stay in your lane, we stay in ours.
Sure. So does that mean we don't need to fund it then? 'Cause I take those funds, I vote on that funding.
Education is
So if I'm staying in my
education
lane.
is a public good, is it not? Can we at least agree on that?
Yeah, well, if I'm to stay in my
Education is
lane.
a public good and it brings benefits to everyone. But the experts control what is done on the campus with the funding. We are the ones who make sure the funding is used well.
Sure, yeah. I just, as long as we're staying in our lanes, it's,
Yeah.
that's, yeah, okay. Yeah, no more questions. Gotcha.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, on to my left, we have Moira. Moira, yeah. Okay, Moira, and then Michaela Ollier will be on my right. Thank you, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a tenured librarian at Indiana University Bloomington. I don't speak for them. But I am also the president of the Indiana Conference of the American Association of University Professors, so Indiana IAEP for short, and I do speak for them. The Indiana AAP is in strong opposition to this bill for many reasons. And over the course of the testimony today, I've revised my remarks somewhat because many of these things have already been touched on. So I've boiled it down to just 3 quick points. One, a personal story. I'm a New Zealander by birth and a Hoosier by choice. Growing up on the other side of the planet, I barely heard of Indiana, but I had heard of its great public universities. And that's why I came here. I have a Fulbright grant to go to any university, anywhere in the U.S. that would take me. Indiana University is the only place I applied. Thank God they said yes. But I'm very much afraid, and many of my colleagues are very much afraid, that this bill would do irreparable harm to that great reputation that Indiana's public universities currently have. 2, Senator Deery mentioned in the back and forth earlier on that he didn't think that there was a great risk of a great deal of lawsuits or legal trouble if faculty were sanctioned or dismissed or detenured as a result of the provisions in this bill. As someone who has served on our faculty grievance committee board for many years over and over, and on the committee A for the entire conference of the AAUP, which looks at campuses around the state, I can tell you, you can count on it. There will be lawsuit. Count on it. Number 3, I fully agree with the purpose of the bill being to encourage all students to feel that they have the freedom to express their views freely. That's a very important thing. And I can still remember, just as a student myself, the moment when I first learned to grapple with the issue of how to stand up to or respond to someone who expressed an opinion that I didn't agree with and having to be reversed. It was hard. It's one of the most important things that we try to teach students in university. That's why we have universities, to teach students that. This bill would not make that any easier. It would make it worse because it would give students an out. Instead of standing up to those they disagree with, or instead of sitting with their discomfort, which inevitably comes, it gives them an out by running from stitching.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. All right, Michaela, you're Michaela?
Yeah,
Okay.
my name is Michaela.
And then we'll have Stephanie Maston. If you can come down to my left, you'll be next. Go ahead, Michaela.
Hello, Chairwoman. Hello, members of the committee. My name is Michaela Ayat, and I'm a sophomore sociology major at Ball State University. I am the president of Feminists for Action, as well as formerly an honors organization for promoting equity fellow for the Honors College. I am here today because I oppose SB 202, which is my primary concern because this is a prime example of Board of Trustee and government overreach, restriction of academic freedom, and censorship. This bill is exemplary of the racism, homophobia, sexism, classism, ableism, and other bigoted ideologies that bigots in this room harbor.
all directly without saying it with the bill's vague language, especially with the substitution of minority with underrepresented, which cheapens the struggles that I have faced to get to university, and perverting the stance of neutrality in order to serve a conservative agenda. This bill censors students and faculty who engage in political or ideological discussions with fear of retribution. This will affect the departments of sociology, criminology, political science, African American studies, women's and gender studies, and other interdisciplinary programs that directly deal with subjects of race and intersectionality. In addition, this bill coerces faculty into teaching viewpoints that directly oppose and deny the rights of marginalized groups. I'm confused as to why the denial of my rights and the rights of other people, my civil rights and the civil liberties of Black, Latinx, LGBT+, and under-resourced communities is considered scholarly and an alternative viewpoint. It is simply dangerous. It is not that. This bill cuts out the possibility of recruiting diverse staff and students to Ball State, and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs like those offered by the Office of Inclusive Excellence, the Multicultural Center, the Honors College, Health Promotion and Advocacy, academic departments, student organizations, and my organizations may not continue. I toiled through the Indiana public school system to get where I am today, and this bill cheapens my education and cheapens the education of all higher ed students. I am not shocked by the stunningly poor quality of education that Indiana has to offer with the behavior of members of this body. Now, because of SB 202, I may not advance to get my graduate degree. How am I, a sociology student, supposed to discuss race, gender, yes, ethnicity, and everything else with fear of retribution? I am revolted by this bill. Wrapping it up, in many ways, Ball State University is a vocational school that offers degrees, where minoritized students and faculty often self-censor, rather than an institution of higher learning. This bill will make Ball State University a bastion of conservatism, serving white legacy students who, through partisan bias, will sit in this very legislature, starkly uneducated, and continue the violence done to marginalized communities through law. Thank you.
If we can't respect the time, no clapping is allowed, please. But we do have to respect the time that there's enough people who want to testify and other people will not have a chance. Were there any questions?
Due diligence to understand survey methodology. My statements here, like those of many of my colleagues, do not represent the views of Purdue University. But I'm actually here in my capacity as president to share some remarks from Carrie Douglas, who is a tenured faculty member at Purdue also. Her remarks are her own views and do not represent the views of Purdue University, the College of Engineering, her unit, nor do they represent the U.S. Department of Defense, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, or any of the other funding agencies that support her work. Carrie asked me to read her statement because, in her words, today I'm collaborating with other universities and Department of Defense managers working to increase educational opportunities for Hoosiers and U.S. citizens. Carrie has been on the leadership of more than $50 million in external awards and co-leads a large Department of Defense funded workplace development consortium focused on microelectronics and semiconductors for the defense sector. Her group leads more than 20 universities with a mission to increase defense's capabilities in microelectronics. She is also a Christian, a product of Indiana's K-12 system, a 3-time Purdue graduate, a lifelong registered Republican, and the daughter of an evangelical minister. She is deeply concerned that Indiana lawmakers are about to jeopardize the progress our state is making and unleash a host of unintended consequences. States who focus on culture wars and attack educational institutions are quickly being recognized as inhospitable to companies that want to hire millennials and attract a diverse workforce. You are gathered to talk about problems that the higher education institutions are best poised to solve, not the problems that affect the majority of Hoosiers. Indiana's economy and development is already challenged by low college degree rates and lagging K-12 scores, and I've sent those citations to the House Committee. She asked that you reject this bill and invest your time in our economy, protecting our natural resources while becoming a leader in semiconductors, workforce development, and the other real priorities for Hoosiers.
Representative Teshko.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So you mentioned that certain states are quickly getting a reputation for being inhospitable to business. That's how?
Yes, that was what she asked me to say. Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. In your opinion, is Indiana one of those states?
Yes.
Currently?
Yes.
Are you aware that we had a near $30 billion worth of investments announced in the last year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think those are mutually exclusive concepts, but.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next, I have Alicia J. to my left, followed to my right, followed by David Sanders to my left, please.
My name is Dr. Alicia J., and I'm a tenure-track assistant professor at a public institution of higher education, but I'm here as a private citizen. I'm concerned about SB 202, specifically Chapter 2, Tenure Promotion, Employment Complaints, and Disciplinary Actions. Section 1B, subsections 1 through 3, page 20, line 38 through 21, line 13. It reads as follows. A faculty member may not be granted tenure or promotion if, based on past performance or other determination by the Board of Trustees, the faculty member is 1. Unlikely to foster a culture of free inquiry, free expression, and intellectual diversity within the institution. 2. Unlikely to expose students to scholarly works from a variety of political ideological frameworks. Or 3. Likely to subject students to political or ideological views and opinions that are unrelated to the faculty member's academic discipline. This bill is written for certain disciplines, but the impact will be felt on all disciplines at all institutions by all faculty. Claiming to be written for intellectual diversity, SB 202 will have the opposite effect. Freedom of speech will be limited out of fear of punitive action. I ask, does unlikelihood and likelihood of a potential behavior meet the threshold for punitive action? As written, this bill denies tenure and promotion to faculty based on unlikelihood and likelihood of action rather than proven misbehavior. The language in this bill, as written, sets a dangerous precedent for legislation, one that does not exist in civil or criminal law. So why do educators face a lower and vague standard of harm? To be convicted of a crime, there is need for beyond a reasonable doubt. But to be an educator, simply being accused of being unlikely to or likely to foster a culture or not foster a culture is justification for stagnation, demotion, and effective termination. I strongly oppose this bill and ask you to oppose the bill outright on the grounds the language is vague and sets a dangerous precedent. If you will not oppose the bill, I implore you, please amend the language to remove Chapter 2, Section 1B, subsections 1 through 3. And if you will not remove that section, change unlikely to and likely to proven or not proven. Thank you.
Thank you. Is David Sanders not here? Okay, David, Alice Pauli.
David Sanders did have to leave because he's meeting with the administration. He left his testimony for his family to read about that.
He could also give the testimony to us and we could distribute it to everyone as opposed to, if you're going to read it, then no, I just give it to us and I'll make sure it's distributed to everyone. You good? Okay. Excuse me, don't start yet. I need to, Alice Pauli. If someone is not in the room, if you have testimony or if you would like your testimony provided in a written document, we will be happy to distribute to all members. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
you need to speak into the microphone, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee members. I'm Jim Mars. I'm a professor of biology at Indiana University, Indianapolis. I'm sorry, I didn't hear David's name. I'm reading for David. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for Indiana University, my school, or my department. I'm reading his statement. And I quote, I'm Associate Professor David Sanders today. I am not representing the views of Purdue University, the College of Science, or the Department of Biological Sciences. I oppose SB 202, and I'm quoting here, defense of free speech, open inquiry, academic freedom at Purdue University in all crucial ways, in which they advance our educational mission. SB 202 is one of the worst pieces of legislation on education in the state of Indiana since the Indiana representatives decided to pass a law that in effect defined the value of pi as 3.2. It was a Purdue professor who was able to persuade the legislature ultimately not to pass this ridiculous bill. SB 202 is an assault on free speech because the focus on so-called intellectual diversity means that instructors will be compelled to teach about certain subject matter and will be punished for teaching other subject matter. In the name of intellectual diversity, do we have to assign scholarly works that declare that Boilermaker Neil Armstrong did not land on the moon, or that HIV doesn't cause AIDS, or vaccination promotes autism, or that there was an Earth with vegetation before there was a sun, or that the Earth is flat, or does not rotate on an axis, or it does not revolve around the sun, or that the Earth is just a few thousand years old, or that dinosaurs died in a flood a few thousand years ago, or that humans and chimpanzees did not evolve from a common ancestor, or that ancient Israelites settled the Americas, or that burning fossil fuels or other human-generated activities are not a major contributor to global warming, or that the dominance of the Ku Klux Klan in Indiana politics a century ago was a positive phenomenon, or that Jews murder children to use their blood in rituals, or that certain races are superior to others. Furthermore, intellectual diversity is apparently going to be a criterion for hiring decisions. Does that mean that there is a Holocaust expert on the faculty of the university a Holocaust expert has to hire a Holocaust denier? Ultimately, how is intellectual diversity going to be measured? And the proposed rules are ripe for abuse. I urge you not to vote for SB 202. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, I have Alice Pauley to my right, followed by Nima Bose to my left, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alice Pauley. I'm a professor of engineering education in the College of Engineering at Purdue University. I'm tenured. I'm here speaking in an individual capacity, like my colleagues, not for Purdue, my college or my department. I speak against SB 202. Today I have two concerns that ultimately relate to workforce issues. The first is about the vague phrase, free inquiry, free expression, and intellectual diversity of viewpoints that the bill claims to protect. To be honest, as you've heard, no faculty member I know thinks that we should restrict these things. But first, the bill's authors are incorrect about the line separating free inquiry and academic freedom, and this bill threatens academic freedom, even while it claims to not threaten it. Second, universities have numerous existing processes to hold faculty who discriminate, tenured or not, to account, without needing expensive state intervention coded into law. And third, all kinds of things that could be framed as intellectual diversity of viewpoints, including perspectives that violate our accreditation in engineering, as I'll describe, or risk my ability to fund and conduct my research in engineering education. My second concern relates to the bill as reading, quote, an institution may not require an applicant, an employee, or a person to pledge allegiance to or make a statement of personal support for any policy or action that would treat similarly situated people or groups of people differently based on a set of demographics or political or ideological movement. Engineering undergraduate programs nationwide are accredited by ABET, which uses criteria operationalizing the professional values of engineering in the US. ABET Criterion 3 on student outcomes requires programs show how graduates meet criteria for professional behavior, including working effectively with diverse teams and developing designs that, quote, meet specified needs with consideration of public health, safety, and welfare, as well as global, cultural, social, environmental, and economic factors, end quote. Leaving aside intent, this bill, as written, would restrict me from doing my job of instilling certain ABET-required professional engineering values and skills in my students, as they can be construed as policies that require students to commit to a particular specific ideological perspective, including how to work with others. My colleagues in other professional schools are also worried. So, I have other remarks. The timer's gone off. I see this bill as unnecessary, expensive, not solving the problems the author intends, and will threaten the best and brightest, deciding whether to come here. I understand Senator Deery thinks his bill won't do what faculty claim it will do. But with all due respect, it's written down. On paper, we are doing analysis of the bill, and it will do these things.
Please wrap up your comments.
Please oppose SB 202. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, next I have Nima Bose, followed by, to my left with MJ Nicolette coming to my right with MJ still in.
My name is Purnima Bose. I am a faculty member and speaking in my individual capacity as a faculty member at Indiana University in Bloomington, where I have taught since 1993. For 14 of my 31 years at IU, I have served as a program director or chairperson of a department. Based on my administrative experience, I want to make two observations. First, when I first joined the university, I was told that the state appropriation for the university budget was 30%. Since then, the state appropriation has decreased precipitously. When I checked several years ago, the appropriation constituted about 11 or 14% of the budget. I suspect that it is much less now. Second, during this period, the bureaucratic demands on faculty and administrators have increased dramatically. We are required to fill out and submit numerous forms for nearly all aspects of institutional life. Fulfilling bureaucratic requirements, such as Representative Delaney's teaching log, reduces the amount of time that we can devote to our primary missions of teaching and research. SB 202 creates an unfunded mandate for review of faculty and politicizes the evaluation of our work. My own research treats growing authoritarianism in South Asia and contemporary Afghanistan. No one on the Board of Trustees has the scholarly qualifications to evaluate my research, nor do they have the expertise to assess my teaching and the courses that I offer on world literature and cultural theory. Yet, SB 202 would empower them to assess my research and teaching. It would also burden the trustees with an undue amount of work, the review of hundreds of instructors annually. Because of their lack of knowledge of different disciplines, the trustees would likely have to hire external reviewers to evaluate our dossiers. This review comes with a hefty price tag. Is the legislature prepared to foot the bill for these reviews when the state currently supplies a small fraction of IU's budget? Universities already have a rigorous process of review for tenure and promotion, a lengthy process that involves external review by experts in the candidate's field. Teaching is evaluated on the basis of reviewing syllabi, student evaluations, and peer observations. In addition, chairs of departments and personnel committees review colleagues on an annual basis. We have mechanisms at the university to address problems in the classroom, ranging from individualized mentoring for faculty members to grievance procedures which students can file. Please oppose SB 202 and its unfunded mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, next I have Mary Jane Nicolette. I'm sorry.
Question.
Who has a question?
Well, I'm Delaney. I'm not Deery. This is not my bill. But secondly, among the things you consider in your reviewing faculty is student observations or comments. Is that something you solicit?
We have student evaluations. They have a quantitative element at the beginning which asks a series of standardized questions. Generally, professors will also add some personalized questions that relates to the specific content that they have taught. And then in addition, there's open remarks for narrative comments.
And does that go into the evaluation of the professor?
Yes.
Thank you. Next, I have Sarah Freeman to my, Mary Jane Nicolette to my right, followed by Sarah Freeman to my left, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee, and Mary Jane Michael Lapp with Ivy Tech Community College. Today, I am rising for Indiana University, Vincennes University, the University of Southern Indiana, Ball State University, Indiana State University, Purdue University, and Ivy Tech to speak on Section 66 of the bill, specifically the Commission for Higher Education review of the complaint section, on which we have some concerns. The bill requires that each state educational institution establish a complaint process for students and employees to submit complaints that a faculty member or other person is not meeting criteria in the bill. Our concern is not with the complaint process, but rather that the bill goes on to say that if the person is not satisfied with the final decision by the institution, the person can appeal to the Commission for Higher Education, which would review and issue a final order within 60 days. Our concern on this is twofold. First, there's a philosophical change in the role of the Commission for Higher Education, which was established in code as a coordinating body and has not had a role in operations and administration of the institutions. Second, and more concerning, is the language is very broad and does not define exactly what the Commission's purview of this review is. We don't know what they are reviewing to ensure we follow our policies and processes and are in line with the federal regulations or something else. Further, we don't know what remedies the Commission will be able to provide. Will they be able to make employment termination decisions, student discipline decisions? Will the institution be responsible for litigation that might come as a result of the Commission's review? These are questions that we have. Individuals dissatisfied with our processes already have avenues for additional complaints, including the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the Office of Civil Rights, and the Indiana Commission for Civil Rights, and the courts. We understand the purview and remedies through these venues. This is an additional process that does not and will not prevent complaints and lawsuits to those venues, but will add additional administrative burden to the schools. We are happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Next, I have Sarah Friedman to my left, followed by Gardner Bovington to my right.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Friedman, and I've been a professor at Indiana University Bloomington for 20 years. I'm speaking to you today in my personal capacity to express my deep concerns about the damage that SB 202 will inflict on the quality and the reputation of higher education in the state. Let's be clear, SB 202 effectively ends academic tenure and eradicates academic freedom in Indiana. I have spent the better part of my career conducting research in a country where academics do not enjoy the right to fully investigate and debate all sides of an issue, or to publish scientific, research-based findings that might challenge prevailing political positions. It's not accidental that many of my colleagues who work in socialist or former socialist countries are here testifying today. The country I'm speaking about is China. I've witnessed firsthand how such constraints limit what's possible to say and to even think. And I've seen how these limits shrink the horizon of imagination for generations to come. Until today, I felt fortunate to work in a state where academic inquiry and intellectual rigor were valued and encouraged, where the metric of evaluation for research and teaching was not how carefully one conformed to a particular political viewpoint. But now, as a consequence of the dangerously vague and politically disputable language of SB 202, I find myself facing a future university where the policing of thought, classroom discussion, and research agendas looks very much like what I have witnessed in China over many decades. And that terrifies me. It terrifies me because arbitrary political assessments have no place in faculty evaluations at any stage. Imposing political criteria for academic evaluation destroys our collective ability to advance knowledge and to educate the next generation. And it is our students who will suffer as self-policing comes to define the university instead of the open exchange of ideas. I urge you to oppose SB 202.
Thank you. Say one question.
I have one
please raise your hand. Thank you.
You've used a term, and a couple of other
Could you
professors,
please-
you and a couple other professors have used a term that is not as familiar to us in the legislature as it is to you. We're all solid on free speech and all that. Academic freedom. Help me understand what that means to you as a professor, how it works, and how important that is. It's not a term that's obvious to us.
Yes, I appreciate that question. Thank you. Academic freedom is the freedom to pursue ideas and lines of inquiry that may not be popular, but to investigate, to, in some fields, measure, to test, to evaluate a multiplicity of sources in order to understand those ideas and develop arguments that are best suited to shedding light on the world around us in a particular problem and how to solve it.
As a layman, could I summarize that as the ability to research difficult topics, and come up with conclusions that you think are solid based on the evidence, and then express them without regard to whether everybody's going to like it?
Right.
That's fairly layman's definition?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Gardner Bowington to my right, followed by Scott Rice Snow to my left, please.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Gardner Bowington, Associate Professor at Indiana University in the Department of Central Eurasian Studies and International Studies. I'm proud to be here in this deliberative body, exercising freedom of speech, which is a bedrock principle of the American political system. I'm tremendously proud. I'm also proud to show up alongside colleagues, but I also want to shout out to the students. I am so proud of what I've seen the students saying today. They remind me, and I think a lot of us teach, why we teach. It is so marvelous to see their engagement, to see their passion. Like us, they've been here since this morning, and they've stayed to be heard. And I just want to say I'm so grateful. So, I have two principles. The first one is about education. I think many educators and many students in the room know two ways education can fail. The first is when there is no diversity of opinion. When there's no controversy, that produces boredom. When there's boredom is when those electronic devices that we talked about this morning come out. When people are bored, they go somewhere else. It is diversity of opinion. It is scholarly disagreement. It is debate that makes education interesting, that makes a classroom dynamic, that makes students stick around for more. Right? The second way it can fail is when people arrive at an opinion and leave at the end of the year with the same opinion. Right? There was much discussion this morning about opinion, about diversity of opinion, about beliefs. I didn't hear much about the science of beliefs. Let me point out a basic finding about beliefs. There's actually fairly little relationship between beliefs and scientifically attested facts, things established in scholarship. So if we promote scholarship, we're doing one kind of thing, and scholars do peer review of scholarship. If we're promoting diversity of opinion, that's a different thing. We should not mistake the one for the other. Okay? I mentioned a deliberative body. Let me observe, since I've been here with all of you since 10:30 this morning, I've heard many people give passionate and eloquent arguments for and against various bills. And with one exception, if I'm not mistaken, I've seen the votes fall on party lines. Is there a diversity of opinion? Do people have the capacity to change their opinions? If not, what are we doing? That's not what I call deliberating. As a teacher, I want deliberation to mean changing opinions. The last thing I will say is, I teach about, and I teach students from Central Asia, former Soviet Union, and People's Republic of China. For years, the People's Republic of China has been seeking soft power to change academics around the world. I congratulate the framers of this bill because they brought Indiana code of law, at least in theory, more into conformity with what it looks like in the People's Republic of China, where there's political supervision of teaching, of content, of exceptional scholarship, and so forth. I think it would be great for Xi Jinping. I think it would be very bad for us.
If I might, for a brief period, I had the pleasure of teaching in the law school in Bloomington, but I think sometimes we don't know what goes on and who are in your classes. And from my position in the topic I was talking about, which was the Iraq War and so forth, I found out that there were people at the university who appeared to be either federal government employees, State Department employees, military officers, or people of that sort. There seem to be quite a few of them. Is that a fair observation?
Absolutely.
And our national government sends people who are involved in security organizations to Indiana University to learn about Central Asia, Russia, China, and so forth. Now, I assume they're not all flaming liberals.
That's my observation as well.
All right, thank you.
May I add one thing? I've also had in my classroom the daughter of a Chinese academic who was to come and serve as a visiting scholar at Indiana University. In 2013, he was detained by the Chinese government because students had made private reports about what he was teaching in the classroom. I don't know whether that language is familiar to you. He was also detained because his scholarship was judged politically unacceptable by the powers that be. He was detained in the airport. His daughter came to the United States. She was able to get a degree at Indiana University. She took my class. I taught her about the politics that imprisoned her father. I don't know how I would go back and tell her. She's now a graduate IU. I don't know how I would tell her that we were moving a little bit closer to the system that deprived her father of his voice, his job, and his freedom. That's shocking to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Scott Rice Snow to my left, followed by John Arthos to my right, please.
Thank you. Yes, I'm actually a retired professor from Ball State University, and happy to be retired. I am, of course, speaking for myself on the basis of 39 years of teaching and serving as chair of 2 different STEM departments. I have similar concerns to those already expressed about recruitment of new faculty in a highly competitive environment. I have suspicions being told that the document is rather soft and is not going to have much impact on how things are going to be done compared to what I read in the document, and that's already been spoken to as well. So I will just leave my comments there.
Thank you, Scott. Next, I have John Arthos to my right, followed by Alexander Bogle to my left, please.
Yeah, hi folks, from Indiana University, Bloomington. I just wanted to echo the issue of putting into consequences as it regards especially the enforcement provisions, but also your fiduciary responsibility, which a number of folks have been talking about. And so the enforcement provisions I'm talking about are reporting requirements, performance reviews, disciplinary actions, and of course oversight. And they're all focused on political, ideological balance. Yeah, so I can just testify to you this week that our campus is really driven by this. There's so much fear now and anger and despair about the language of this bill. So I can testify to you that that is having the effect that people are saying it will have. It's a great public university system that we have here, with some, it's world class, we're punching way above our own weight. So we're just telling you, don't destroy that. And this is the sort of thing that can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. To my left, I have Alexander Bogle.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry. I'm usually looking that way, not over this way.
You may have done that. Well, thank you for testifying. Just real quick, because you mentioned fear, that there's fear because of this bill. I did want to go back and cite this fire report that showed 72% of conservative faculty actually fear the loss of their job or reputational costs because of their ideology. I'm not sure is there any thought we should give to those professors' fears?
Yeah, I mean, I really can't speak to that. That's not an area that I have any knowledge that I can speak to, except for the kinds of things that you can say to them.
Thank you.
Okay, Alexander Bogle to my left, followed by Sharon Fraser Burgess to my right, please.
Hi, my name is Xander Vogel. I'm a student at Ball State University in Muncie, and I'm here to voice my strong opposition to SB 202 due to the threat I feel it poses to freedom of expression on campus. The vague wording of the bill opens the gates to the abuse of power and the censoring of speech on a partisan basis. Many of the students and teachers at my college are already afraid of the effects this bill will have on them and their field of study. Colleges, universities, places of higher education in general need an environment of open expression and discussion in order to thrive. And this bill will have a negative impact on that. It will make people afraid to discuss their ideas and their beliefs due to their fears of legal and professional repercussions. I'm worried that this will, like in other states that have tried to limit speech on campuses, drive young people and trained faculty away from our state and towards others who truly value freedom of expression. A lot of my fellow students intend to leave the state when their schooling is done because they see bills like SB 202 and they think that our state will get more and more restrictive with time. This bill will hurt our state and its future. It's bad policy that will do nothing but hurt freedom of speech on campus and drive more young people away from our state. If you want what's best for our state, you should vote no on Senate Bill 202. Thank you.
Representative Tashkent.
Just real quick. What did you say? Did you say what you were studying? I apologize.
What my personal field of study is? Yeah. It's urban planning. I didn't mention that.
No, that's fine. I didn't know if I missed it. Just curious. Do you mind telling us how you first learned about Senate Bill 202?
Senate Bill 202? I learned about it from other students in the urban planning program. They taught me about it, and I did my own research, and I decided I want to get involved.
Do you have an idea of how other students are hearing about the bill?
I guess I don't know where the other students would have first heard about it, but I just assumed generally a political organization on campus.
We heard earlier about like an open forum about the bill. Was that Ball State or what?
There was a forum about the bill. I don't know if it's the one you're thinking about.
Okay. Do you mind asking who led that forum?
I'm blanking on the name. I don't know the name.
Was it a faculty member or? I guess my question is, we've seen a lot of students here today, and I was just wondering if some of this was faculty driven.
I know that there were faculty members at that, but there were also faculty members there who were specifically voicing opposition to that. Like the provost of the college was there to provide an alternative opinion to the students.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Next I have Sharon Fraser Burgess to my right, followed by Stephen Carr to my left, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Benning and committee members. I appreciate this opportunity to testify. My name is Sharon Fraser Burgess, and I'm a faculty member at a state university. Taking seriously the concerns about undue capital bias, taking seriously the concerns about undue capital bias and partisanship should not involve dismantling the entire higher education system as we know it in an untested approach to root out loosely substantiated and anecdotal claims about there being non-neutrality. An alternate mechanism like a state ombudsperson to field students' complaints in order to address the perception of partisanship is a more pragmatic solution. Why would such a drastic step be taken, one might ask, as to dismantle higher education as we know it? The authors of the bill claim to protect students' freedom of speech by protecting them from hyper-political curriculum. Actually, the bill undermines the environment of mutual trust that is the norm for higher education, and that college and university students need to safely and bravely pursue making up their own minds. It does so on the basis of limited and really questionable data and time in-depth research. Were there focus groups, for instance? Senator Deery, with all due respect, drew on a Pew Research Center poll from 2019 to make the case that conservatives feel unwelcome in higher ed universities. But what is conservatism today? Is it the politics of Reagan? Is it that of George Bush? Is it that of President Trump? Is it of Liz Cheney? Conservatives don't even agree about what being conservative is. Definitions will vary, as will liberalism. Do we really want to subject these august institutions to the vicissitudes of political ambiguity? A democratic society which is governed by self-rule demands the cultivation of critical thinking skills in the company of trusted faculty experts who are deeply embedded in community of scholarship that provides
Sharon, the time's expired, I'm sorry. It was very quiet.
Oh. Okay. Well, I'll try to finish up in 30 seconds. This bill sets up college students to be vigilant patrols for grievances rather than being positioned to prioritize gaining new knowledge. As you're looking out to catch a professor offending your belief system, how could you discern what is worth knowing? The last point I wanted to say really quickly is the two-tier system that it will set up, because it will impose this kind of scrutiny on state universities, but not on private universities. And so this is another consideration that we might want to take into account before we consider dismantling higher education as we know it.
Seeing no questions, thank you for your comments. Let's have Stephen Card to my right and left, followed by Logan Guard to my right, please.
Thank you. I'm a tenured Purdue University Fort Wayne faculty member, and I'm speaking only as a private individual here. And these are my own. SB 202 claims to restore political neutrality to Indiana's higher education campuses, but neutrality for whom? The bill politicizes neutrality because of its partisan overreach. It eliminates tenure. It creates a state oversight commission to police individual faculty political beliefs. It establishes networks of on-campus informants. It goes after diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and offices. Partisan decrees of neutrality still remain deeply partisan when political partisanship remains deeply embedded within both the premise and the solution. If rooting out perceived political dogma on college campuses is still the single-minded dogma driving this bill, then at least consider the bureaucratic chaos this legislation will impose on the backs of sort of the everyday business at colleges and universities. Without a tenure system, recruitment of qualified candidates to faculty positions within both STEM and non-STEM fields alike will only become that much harder and make our campuses that much less competitive to these candidates. Faculty and staff, regardless of political affiliation, now will have to scramble to create more unworkable layers of bureaucracies for how to investigate the personal political beliefs of every tenure-track faculty member on campus. This will happen on top of everything else faculty and staff already do. Other than finding ways to terminate and demote faculty, the bill's other major triumph will lead to further distance and distract higher education institutions from their core mission to deliver quality educational access and value to Indiana students. The bill might appear to uphold political neutrality, but at its core, it is itself deeply biased against higher education and deeply biased against the rights of Hoosiers to access the quality education they deserve, free from government interference and the needless bureaucracies and burdens it imposes. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, Stephen. Next, I have Logan Guard to my right, followed by Kathy Mars to my left, please.
I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak today in opposition to SB 202. My name is Logan Guard. I'm an undergraduate student at Ball State University, and I cannot agree more with what the previous speakers in opposition as well as the representatives in opposition have said. With all due respect, Senator Deery, Rotz, and Johnson, I'd like to begin by saying SB 202 would intrude upon the previous tenure that has been upheld by pedagogical professionals throughout the history of higher education thus far. The content and the arguments that Senator Deery gave is rooted in fear-mongering and misconstruing the intentions of this bill. He loves to dodge questions and loosely throws around the word scholarly, but what is not scholarly is restriction and threatening the careers of our hardworking educators. Passing this bill would be incredibly disastrous to the very thing it claims it will uphold: diversity, equity, and inclusion. In addition, the requirement that eligible personnel are subject to, at the very least, quinquennial review of their performance and are subject to being reported and reprimanded on unclear motives based on an undefined defined ideology promotes misguided and inauthentic practices within the classroom environment. The harmful nature of this bill is evident in its loose wording and its failure to be goal-oriented at the core of its hypothetical implementation. Threatening the careers of professional educators as well as the safety of students will have a plethora of adverse effects on some of the most important universities in Indiana. Approximately 21% of Ball State's undergraduate population are racially ethnic minorities, and 65% of undergraduate students identify as women. At IUB, about half of the students are women. At Purdue University Lafayette, about a quarter of the undergraduate population are racially ethnic minorities, and again, about half are women. SB 202 attacks the integrity and the existence of classes that encourage feminist courses and courses that encourage ethnic diversity and the education of its contextual history, as well as others like queer courses and intersectionality courses. If this bill is passed, many of these students will go elsewhere because they feel their physical safety is at risk and their academic voices are nullified. This will result in the schools losing heaps of profit. At an open board meeting last night at Ball State's campus, faculty, students, parents, and citizens unanimously agreed that this bill was deleterious to higher education at a grand scale. Even Ball State's provost, Anand Marie, strongly voiced how he passionately opposes this bill and its potential consequences on the safety of students and faculty.
Can you wrap it up, please, your time?
I urge you to take a step back and consider what damage this bill will do to education throughout the state, and how it will threaten both the well-being of students and professors, as well as the academic integrity of universities throughout Indiana. And lastly, I would like to mention that regardless of if you're conservative, Republican, Democratic, liberal, I'd like you to take note of how the endless line of people that are coming up to speak in opposition and the rather absent number of people that are in favor of this. Thank you.
Seeing no questions, next I have Kathleen Martin to my left, followed by Benjamin Robinson to my right, please.
Thank you. My name is, to the chairman and the members of the committee, my name is Kathy Mars. I'm a professor of biology at IUPUI and also an adjunct faculty in women, gender, and sexuality studies. Again, I'm, like most people here today, I'm speaking in an individual capacity and not on behalf of my employer, Indiana University, and to ask the members of the House Education Committee to oppose Senate Bill 202. I'll try to be brief because many of the points have been already stated today, but I'll say that in my 25 years at IUPUI, I've taught well over 12,000 students. I teach introductory biology and a number of other classes. It is my privilege to be involved in their education and their academic development, from their first day of college to their senior capstones and beyond. Thousands of these hardworking students have become our state's physicians, dentists, pharmacists, nurses, biomedical researchers, and whatever their major ended up being, they are contributing to this state, if they have stayed in the state. And so they are contributing to the health and well-being of the state. I'm also a resident of Zionsville, and Representative Cash is my state representative. The points that have been made, I'll just briefly say again, and to Senator Deery, I could not disagree with you more on your points. This bill does politicize tenure review and will abolish tenure as we know it. It has scant benefit and an unacceptable cost in terms of monitoring this. If we did not just see a personal example of this 2 minutes ago, it encourages people to inform on where they received information. We just saw this with the young man who was up here being asked to inform where he heard about a meeting. So suspicion and surveillance will absolutely be a part of this legislation if passed. Our inclusive excellence initiatives will not be in existence, and it will stifle free expression and academic speech. In addition, I'll just briefly say, because this is a point that I'd like to make aside from those, that education is a major driver of economic growth, as we know. And Indiana is one of the few states to have 2 Tier 1 research institutes, Indiana University and Purdue, as well as many great public university. Weakening tenure, as others have said, puts at risk our ability to attract and retain top researchers in all of these areas. We have a decrease in workforce development, diminished attractiveness for businesses. Yes, thank you. So my final comment, and thank you. is unless and until the full consequences of this bill are understood, I ask you to completely oppose this bill. This is not something that should be supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, next I have Benjamin Robinson to my right, followed by Vanessa Rapatz to my left, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee members. My name is Ben Robinson, Associate Professor of German at IU, former chair of my department, and immediate past president of the Bloomington chapter of the AAP. And I'm speaking for myself as an individual. Actually, first, Representative Teshka, I did want to say about the fire survey that you've been mentioning, is that we're really proud of the executive president of fire, Nico Perino, who's an IUP graduate and a frequent guest of the AAP. At Bloomington. And that study in particular, we're proud of how he points out that sanctioning of faculty is one of the criteria by which fire evaluates a university, whether or not they're living up to their standards of academic freedom. And so that's part of our remit as the AUP. In any case, though, I wanted to recognize SB 202's aims to secure space for views perceived as underrepresented on campuses. But the bill's premise still fits my experience as IU faculty. SB 202 views our universities through a lens that divides students and faculty into conservative and liberal. I respect the work you do here in the Statehouse, but it isn't the work we do on a campus. I don't know a single faculty member who divides their students through the lens of party caucuses. We teach students to make judgments on the basis of disciplinary evidence and argument. Let me share what that looks like. This summer, a colleague and I took 20 students on a tour of civil rights sites in the South. We had a black Hoosier, a Hoosier from a mixed-race family, a young woman from rural Jay County, but I want to mention a conservative student from Ellettsville who finished the semester interning for Nebraska Senator Ben Sass. In Cleveland, Mississippi, on our way to Jackson, we sat down together for a discussion of the Voting Rights Act, for Shelby versus Holder, for woke politics, and of course, German philosophy. This wasn't a debate about legislation, it was education. We were testing frameworks, weighing evidence, sharing perspectives, learning how to balance conviction and responsibility to the truth. And the truth we learned that night was respect for each other's views. But here's my point, this isn't an exception. This is our job. And Indiana faculty do their jobs well. I'm sure you've read the 2023 Indiana Campus Free Speech Report, which you commissioned in 2021. Despite slicing and dicing of students into liberal and conservative, gay and straight, black and white, never more than a fifth say their instructors are not exposing them to diverse viewpoints, and only 6% disagree that students can express their opinions freely. Yes, some professors are more liberal and some are more conservative, but we are diverse as a body. To pass legislation that would scrutinize us as individuals, holding us to political standards different from our professional judgment and our scholarly expertise, to shape the whole by regulating each of us that misunderstands what distinguishes college from secondary curriculum. What distinguishes American colleges...
Wrap up.
Yeah, it's just one sentence more. What distinguishes American colleges as the envy of the world is that our curriculum is shaped by freedom of inquiry, not state regulations. It may be appropriate for secondary level when we're teaching fundamentals, not innovating on the cutting edge of the marketplace of ideas. To undermine that freedom with an expensive layer of political review would be to consign Indiana higher education to mediocrity. Please, please vote no on Senate Bill 202.
That's an awfully long last sentence. Perhaps you can have some English, yes. Vanessa Rapids to my left, followed by Eric Rasmussen to my right, please.
Thank you, and you actually pronounced my name right, which was amazing. I am an associate professor of English at Ball State University. My views are my own, and my first views are that I am extremely proud and privileged to be among so many of my students today. Good job, y'all. As an English professor of Shakespeare, I spent a lot of time close reading, and a close reading of this bill shows aspects that run counter to conservative ideals of small government and freedom of speech. While the bill's intent may be to address the overreach of diversity, equity, and inclusion on campuses, it ultimately threatens the freedom of expression for conservative students and faculty as well as progressives. Chiefly, SB 202 creates a system where faculty, staff, and students can report each other for a perceived lack of intellectual political diversity, without any established system to investigate the veracity of these complaints. The faculty holding conservative views may therefore be subject to complaints and accusations of not being tolerant of other perspectives. It states that universities may not allow enrollment to prospective students who make a statement of diversity, equity, inclusion, or, quote, related topics, thus limiting their free speech. A conservative student who speaks to their own personal struggles due to their identity or socioeconomic status or their commitment to the free expression of diverse ideas may be barred from enrollment based on these criteria. It politicizes apolitical fields, though most of our fields are political in some way or another, but it politicizes these fields by subjecting all faculty, including STEM and business faculty, to a 5-year review that is based on their exposure of students to different political and ideological frameworks. While the text specifies that these frameworks must be germane to the discipline, the entirety of the review is based on the political/ideological frameworks, which may make faculty feel the need to fit these criteria. Well, the intent of this bill seems to be to ensure liberal faculty members are not forcing students to accept their viewpoints. The actual language of the bill will damage the acceptance and retention of conservative students as well as progressives and faculty as well on both sides. Please oppose SB 202.
Thank you, Vanessa. Seeing no questions. Next, I have Eric Rasmussen to my right, followed by Alicia Van Gunn to my left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm glad I came today because I have a kind of a different view than almost everybody else, I think. I'm something of an expert on how universities persecute conservative Christian professors. I know a lot about professors generally. In fact, Mr. Smith's not here, but Dr. Maffeo is a liberal professor at IU Northwest who is heavily mistreated by the university. And one thing we might do is ask the university how much they spent settling their case with him this last year. Anyway, we're all tired, so I'll just tell lots of stories. Well, in 2019, my provost and dean called me sexist, racist, homophobic, reprehensible, vile, stupid, bigoted, and loathsome. And that's just what they said in public about it. By now, I've retired, and that was for tweeting something about geniuses being predominantly male, with high IQs, low conscientiousness, and low agreeability. So, thank you for telling me. Anyway, by now I've retired. I'm teaching 7th grade math, without a teaching license, I should say. I'm teaching some kids who are held back, and work for these few at least. And encouraging free speech, most recently teaming up with Jim Baum to write an amicus brief in Net Choice v. Paxton. Stories. Representative Delaney said, why aren't the trustees doing their job? What's stopping them? The answer is, there's a long distance between the trustees and the action. The finance department at the business school a few years ago had 6 candidates they were recommending they want to make a job offer to. All 6 flunked their DEI statements, and the administration only let them make offers to 2 who, as women, were kind of honorary passees of DEI. So they're already, you see, we are losing the faculty because of DEI statements. This bill would help with that. Another case, a retired professor defended me in a letter to the editor of the newspaper. He had been a very popular teacher and was not invited back the next year to teaching, even though after he retired, he had been teaching several years. These people can be vindictive. Let's see. Mr. Delaney also talked about how a liberal political science professor and a conservative poli-sci professor could kind of balance each other. But are there any conservative poli-sci professors? Of the 27, there's maybe one that I think could be, though my colleagues might correct me. In law school, of 42 professors, there's not a single conservative. There was one who retired 5 years ago. Let's see, Dan Smith spoke earlier. He was associate dean during my 2003 counseling, after which I received tiny raises for several years. The associate dean after him called me to her office and said, Eric, are you happy with things here? Because she was worried I might leave after that kind of treatment.
Eric, your time has expired. So
okay, thank you.
go on and on. We appreciate you sharing. Thank you. Next I have Alicia Van Dyne, followed by Joel Hand. Joel's in the room. Okay. How about Michael Ng? Okay, Michael, if you can come up to my right, please.
Alrighty, tough act to follow, I guess. But my name is Alicia Van Dyne. I am here to oppose Senate Bill 202. I am a Ball State student studying psychological science with a minor in neuroscience. However, I am representing myself today. I would like to say that I am a very atypical case, and that is because of the wonderful opportunities that the state of Indiana has given me. I am 19 in my senior year, and I have applied to graduate programs and been accepted to some, and it is so amazing to have been able to mentor so many students in the various leadership positions that I've held on campus and in my community. And it has been amazing to also have the same mentorship experiences given to me by faculty, run by programs that actually prioritize DEI initiatives. And I'm afraid that passing Senate bills like this, and just any type of bill like this, will cause a ripple effect to injure and harm those programs that have actually seen an increased retention in so many students, and especially students of minoritized populations. I sat through and I went through the Teacher Scholar Program, and I went through the Pathways Project for undergraduates, and both of those programs are predominantly advertised and appreciated by students of color, students who are first-generation students, students from low-income backgrounds, all very diverse backgrounds, and all of these programs serve to uplift these students at Ball State University. And I sat here 2 weeks ago representing Ball State at BSU Day at the Statehouse to show just how amazing programs like the Teacher Scholar Program have been to provide students with these opportunities. And so, if we pass Senate Bill 202, I'm afraid that we will cause so many students who have benefited from the state of Indiana to lose those opportunities. Any questions?
Seeing no questions, thank you, Alicia. Next, I have Michael Ng to my right, followed by Brian DeLong to my left, please.
Aloha kako. I am Dr. Michael Ng, a professor in the Department of Religious Studies and soon to be the Director of Native American and Indigenous Studies at Indiana University in Bloomington, where I've been on the faculty for 13 years. I also have deep Hoosier roots, as multiple generations of my ancestors were born in the Fort Wayne and Muncie areas beginning in the middle of the 1800s. I consider myself a proud Hawaiian Hoosier. I can't help but feel that myself and the areas that I study are in the crosshairs of this bill. When you teach about indigenous peoples, or religion for that matter, you would inevitably offend someone at some point, regardless of how much you try to stress intellectual diversity. For instance, Native peoples have a long and painful history with our government, and I might stress that some Native peoples are proud Americans. My father served in the armed forces. And I might stress that many Native peoples are Christians. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints myself. But at the end of the day, I cannot control how students feel or what they take away from the classroom. The crux of my concern with the bill is in sections 57 and 58 on pages 17, where the Board of Trustees are to create a committee of diversity. That differs from the Senator's remarks earlier today, which suggests that the committee can essentially use, or that the Board of Trustees can use what's already a part of the university in dealing with these situations. Instead, it creates these committees that may or may not be knowledgeable in the fields that I work in, yet have the power to determine my employment. And in actuality, the Dean of Students at IU, at least here in Bloomington, and the Student Code of Rights at IU already provide the exact same protections that the bill is supposed to provide, and I quote briefly here. Students have the freedom to raise relevant issues pertaining to classroom discussion, including personal beliefs, ask questions about data presented, and express alternative opinions without concern for any retaliation or academic penalty. Students have the right to expect that their work will be evaluated by academic standards alone, close quote. If these rights are being violated, a formal complaint can already be made, which can be taken to trial, and many of the same consequences already listed in the bill can be dealt out. But in this case, this is done by a dean of students that have an understanding of the lay of the land and the areas that we study. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Seeing no questions, next I have Brian DeLong, followed by Susan Preble to my right, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the committee, as well as the staff in the room, for staying for so long. I know it can be a long day. My name is Brian DeLong. I'm the Director of Debate at Indiana University. I'm a 13-year professor, senior lecturer for the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs. I think many of the arguments that I came here to make have largely been made, and so I want to provide maybe a few unique perspectives from what it means to be a professor that focuses on controversy. I have moderated IU Republican and IU Democratic debates on campus, and it seems like those programs are thriving, so I'm a little bit unclear about whether or not IU Republicans don't exist in various campuses, that is evidence to warrant a piece of legislation like this. I do succeed in alienating and angering many of my students, and I think that's a part of my job. However, that is kind of a suggestion of some of the fear that I have about what this legislation will do. That when I anger a student after a lecture, that student may very well leave that classroom, not come back, and then register a complaint. That then is going to require a lot of my time to potentially deal with in order to then have those mechanisms work. And so I have significant fear. I have instances in which people have attempted to join the team, for example, when we had a climate change topic, and a student left the team because they had to defend that climate change is real. And there are alternative examples to that as well, including students coming in and presenting on ivermectin being more significant in terms of a pushback against COVID. I'm a little bit worried. I listened to this committee for a long time. You all had incredible evidence around some of the programs you were promoting, especially the reading bills. I saw some heat maps. That is stuff that professors in O'Neill can put together and do an incredible job. But the evidence that's being used to justify this bill seems incomprehensible to me. It seems like, Senator Deery pulling up Gallup polls and things like that without a reference to the cost of education, the change in the political things that have just happened in the last few years means that senator may smell smoke, but the fire's not at the university. The fire may be in this room and various other locations across the country, including social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Seeing no questions, next I have Susan Preble to my right, followed by Becca Rice to my left, please.
Thank you, Chairman Danny, members of the committee. My name is Susan Preble. I'm here representing Indiana State University. We believe Senate Bill 202 represents an unwarranted overreach into how the state educational institutions have been successfully governed for decades. The stated impetus for this bill is an attempt to reverse the decline in our college going rate. There's no doubt that our attainment rate has declined, but we don't really know why, which I think is why the they're doing a study to figure that out. So I'm sure there are multiple reasons. Enrollment is starting to rebound a little bit after the pandemic. At ISU, enrollment in our freshman and sophomore classes is up year over year, which is a good thing. The extremely important work you all did last year with the FAFSA requirement and the auto-enroll in 21st century scholars is life-changing, and I also hope it will help increase enrollment. To speak directly to the bill, we've shared the following concerns with the author, who I actually would like to thank for proactively reaching out to all of the state educational institutions and asking for input. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. We feel that changing the number of trustees appointed by the governor and removing the alumni appointments may result in a loss of institutional memory. We oppose the changes to the tenure review process. Requiring trustees to review tenure every 5 years upends an effective process that ISU, in particular, has spent years developing. Senator Deery is right. We do review tenured faculty every 3 years at ISU. However, the criteria by which the faculty is evaluated is based on documentation of their achievements in teaching, research, scholarship, creative activity, and service. The review process starts at the departmental level and flows all the way up to the president. It goes through many levels of review. Trustees set policy and guide the strategic direction of the university. They do not have the academic experience and knowledge to evaluate faculty. Also, thank you very much. We appreciate your consideration.
Representative Davis, I'm sorry, Cash.
Thank you for testifying.
Of course.
When you talked about the decline in student enrollment, and nobody really knows the totality of the reasons. When students leave mid-degree or before, halfway through the year or such, do you guys ever do surveys or reach out to them or something?
I don't know. Actually, that's a good question. I'm fairly new at ISU, but I will find that out for you, and I'll email you with that.
And I'm sure there's a variety of reasons,
Sure.
economic
I'm sure.
and, all kinds of.
I'm sure. I think there are probably, like everything, right? There's never one silver bullet, but lots of reasons. So hopefully the commission will be able to nail it down for us. Thank you.
Representative Teska.
Thank you. I just want to ask real quick about, similar to a question I asked IU earlier about the local representative
Right.
portion. What is your institution's take?
We're agnostic on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Seeing no further questions, Katie Jones, if you can come to my right, and Dr. Rice, to my left. Please, Becca.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Becca Rice, and I'm representing Ball State today. We appreciate the positive and ongoing discussion with you and your colleagues in the Senate. At Ball State, we have a highly effective and well-functioning Board of Trustees. A highly effective and well-functioning board, which has established a constructive relationship with President Burns, with our provost, as well as university leadership, including our vice presidents and our deans. Because of that partnership, our board has been able to navigate effectively through a pandemic, coming through with increased enrollment for incoming students, returning students, and graduate students. Our board has spearheaded distinctive community partnerships. You're likely familiar with our partnership with the Muncie Community Schools, which is transforming our local public schools. And another example of our continued focus on community impact can be found in our Village Revitalization Project, a project that will transform the commercial district immediately adjacent to our campus and will catalyze approximately $200 million in investments to our local community. An impact that has been validated as the Lilly Endowment makes a $35 million philanthropic investment to our institution in the recent college and community collaboration grant. These achievements are of a highly effective partnership and a highly effective board, and we are proud of those accomplishments and so many others. Our board has been working consistently to promote both cultural and intellectual diversity. In our strategic plan, we define inclusiveness as a commitment to respect and embrace equity, inclusion, and diversity in people, ideas, and opinions. We have been able to recruit, support, and retain a diverse population of students, faculty, and staff, and we encourage and reward diversity of thought. This fall, we welcomed our most diverse enrollment of freshman students, with underrepresented minorities making 28% of our freshman class. Our board also recommended we adopt the University of Chicago principles in 2020, and we've continued to celebrate and encourage diversity in thought and freedom of expression on our campus. This bill, just quickly to wrap up, it treats institutions and boards uniformly. Current law differentiates between those boards, and we ask that you consider to differentiate between those boards that are highly effective, like Ball State universities, and if there are others you'd like to see changes. Thank you.
So Cash, I'll get you a second. Kate Jones, is Kate Jones in the room? If not, Chelsea McDonald. If you come to the right, Representative Cash, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to thank you. You and I have spoken. Sorry, I can't see you over Jeff's head or Representative Jordan's head. So, but you and I have spoken previously, and I know that Ball State really for multiple years has really been actually seeking from outside entities and doing research on how you can make Ball State more inclusive of everybody, including across conservative, liberal, and looking at how that works out there. And I also want to commend that I know that you guys did quite a bit last year and maybe even this year on Holocaust education. So I just want to give you guys some kudos for that.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. Next, I have Chelsea McDonald, followed to my right, followed by Danielle Sip. To my left is Danielle in the room.
Hi, my name is Chelsea McDonald. I am the Director of Outreach for Mad Voters, a social advocacy organization. We focus mainly on legislative education, following bills, breaking them down, and understanding them. The author of this bill claims it is meant to protect those on college campuses who may have less popular viewpoints, who may feel that their opinions are not as valued. It's interesting to me to look around the room of legislators who overwhelmingly belong to one party and not see the hypocrisy of these efforts. Because in our own Statehouse, minority rules are not protected or valued. We have seen ideas quashed because they aren't coming from the right person. Amendments ignored because the person offering them belongs to the other party. So, I would ask you, if the tables were turned and that other party were in the supermajority position that you currently occupy, would you still be pushing this bill? Perhaps, rather than attempting to control narratives and inject partisanship into university affairs, we should instead listen to what they are telling us. They are telling us that this bill will limit Indiana's ability to recruit and retain talented and diverse higher educators. That curriculum and retention decisions are best left to educators, not politically appointed personnel who may not even be experts in that content area themselves. A politically appointed body cannot be in a position to review faculty on political criteria that they alone set. When universities are perceived as bastions of a particular political ideology, it can erode public trust in higher education institutions as impartial sources of knowledge. A question. If your conservative beliefs are so popular, why are you fighting so hard to silence what you believe is the minority? I also want to point out that one of the things that Teshka keeps pointing to, the FIRE study, they have received major funding from groups which primarily support conservative, libertarian causes, including the Bradley Foundation, Sarah Shea Foundation, and the Charles Crow Foundation. Any questions?
Seeing no questions, thank you. Next, I have Danielle Sip to my left, followed by Marshawn Woley. Is Marshawn in the room?
Okay,
Hold on a second, Daniel. Marshawn's gone. How about David Warsinger? Okay, go ahead, please.
All right, hello, my name is Danielle Sip. I'm from Gary, and I'm a university student from Ball State University. I'm testifying to oppose Senate Bill 202. I want to first mention that despite us talking about diversity, I've seen no mention of the discrimination that Black students, past and present, face on university campuses. In 2016, about 81% of Black students felt that they were discriminated against. And this is the Pew Research Center, I must say that first. Nearly half in 2019 felt that they need to change how they talk around other people to be accepted in those spaces, right? So my concern is we cannot have a conversation about encouraging intellectual diversity, free expression, and free inquiry if we are not then addressing the racial bias that students of color face on a daily basis. I also want to mention to Senator Deery. Yes, Senator Deery. You mentioned that the bill won't mandate what teachers can teach, but if students can simply complain about an opinion a teacher shared that they don't like, regardless of the restructured procedures and consequences, what precedence does a vague bill like this set? And for the bill itself, it claims to encourage inclusivity of different ideals and thought, but allows for the non-admission of students and faculty based on DEI points mentioned in the statement. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that there are many contradictions throughout this bill. And if you guys want to pass this forward, I suggest that you address those contradictions and fix them, because right now they're easily exploitable. Thank you. Any questions?
Representative Cash?
I
What I ask is that you close, we are not moving the bill, obviously, today, it's a hearing only, that we, next time the book is scheduled, will allow you to close at that point in time. That's okay. I want to thank everyone for your attention and for the manner in which you present yourselves. And without the meeting on education is adjourned.